What's up, Black Comic Lords? Look, there are certain names that as a comic collector, everyone should know, right? Neil Adams, John Buscema, John Romita Sr., John Byrne. These are titans in the comic book culture. These are artists that set the standard and help build the companies of Marvel and DC. But we here at Black Comic Lords want to make note and recognize artists that look like us, that are just as good, that help define that culture, but are unheralded. If you are a true comic book collector, and if you do not know the name Chuck Patton, that's just why we're here. Because if you're a true comic collector, there is no way that if you own any decent DC comics, you don't own any of his art. So with that, let's get to the show. What's up, everybody? Mr. Chuck Patton.
Gentlemen.
You know, sir, there's a term that I like to use that's been brandished about all the time, and that term is GOAT. You, sir, are a GOAT.
Oh, you're very, very, very sweet. Thank you. Shouldn't say sweet, but
I'm not sweet, but I'm certainly honest.
Ain't that?
We starting already.
Look, man, it is an honor, a true honor to have you on here. We've wanted you here for a long time. Your name has been brandished about in our space forever since its inception. In large part by the man above me, Phil Thompson, who is probably the president of the Chuck Patton fan club. Every time we come on and we interview somebody, he'd be like, "Yeah, that was a good interview. That was a good interview. That wasn't Chuck Patton, but that was a good interview, dude. That was good luck."
Dude, that touches me.
I wish I could say I'm exaggerating because he's here, but that's actually 100%. It's 100% real. So we're happy to finally have you here. Before we get started, shout out to everybody in the chat. Kanan White in the building, showing you love. What's up, Kanan?
Awesome.
Please like this video, share it on your social media, and subscribe to the Black Comic Lords channel. Thank you very much. So, Mr. Chuck Patton, you are a legendary comic book artist and animation artist Guru.
That's a nice way of putting it. I don't know. I kind of prefer what my artists called me. My favorite artists, the guys I've worked with for the longest, started calling me sensei, since I'm a nut for martial art, Japanese kung fu, Chinese films. Sensei, the only way they would have got my heart more if they said Sifu. So that's even better. Because I
like that
chamber, So
we gonna call you Seafood Patton tonight, not Seafood Patton.
No, it's not Seafood Patton tonight. It's Seafood Patton from now on.
From here on out.
I'm gonna hashtag this video Seafood Patton. That's your new name. That's it.
I know that I said I was going to be quiet and wait until we get to the animated animation part.
Nobody believed that was going to happen.
You're right. But I just want to say, it's a pleasure to have Chuck on the show. You know, when Paul said, "Man, I'm getting Brother Patton on," I was like, "Man, I gotta get on this episode." You know, I've known the brother for a while. We talked on the phone today. We tried to link up when I was in LA last year. We tried to link up. It didn't happen because I wanted him to be, I went out. I really wanted him to be in the collections in black, but he's going to be in the director's cut. We said we're going to make that happen.
We'll make it happen.
He's just somebody, for me, it's there's certain people who are unsung and people don't know about or whatever, right? So I don't necessarily want to say that for Patton because you all know about him because you all know his work. It's just so extensive. And I think that's when you're so good at so many different things that sometimes certain people may know you for this thing or that thing, but a lot of times there isn't that one particular piece. You understand what I'm saying? Like you'll have your comic fans, but even your comic fans will be DC comic fans and may not be from the Marvel side of things. And then there's the animation side of things. I'm a big. I used to be a super big anime head before it became mainstream. Back when they were just on VHS with no subtitles, and I would just sit there trying to understand, what they were. And there's times if you go to Brother Patton's IG page,
yes,
and you could tell this man has such a love for the art of animation where he's just sharing stuff all the time. It's constant. And there's many times I'll comment, I'll message you, and I'll say, "Man, what's that? I don't know what this is. Who did this or who, whatever." And he always responds. So, I just want to say I appreciate that. It's never been no weird energy or no, I'm not talking to this cat. Like he's always responded. And to me, I really do appreciate that. I feel like you're one of the giants in the industry. I just feel that a lot of people don't understand the magnitude of just your entire catalog of what you do or what you have done.
Oh man, thank you. No,
your resume is not only varied but extensive.
Thank you. Yeah. I will say this to take me off the pedestal, because Phil heard this already. People say legend, they like to throw the words around, which is fine. I appreciate it, but the truth is, I'm a survivor. I look at my career. Those who know me, I've used this analogy before, where I look at my entire work history as theaters of war. Yeah. These are things I got through, things I went in young and hopefully naive, and then came out somewhat scarred and bloody. But I came out and I learned something. And if it built on anything for me, is personally, I gained a lot of knowledge. And I tried to translate it into my own work. And that's the part where, on a personal level, I feel like, you know what, I haven't done that I'm not satisfied. But if clients are, if my people are, that's all I ask for.
Let's talk about that.
Sure.
Let's start at the very beginning. How did you get into comics?
Honestly, it was a life's ambition. I mean, this is something I started at my earliest memory of as a child at 4 of drawing. Right. It was always around visual, and I know we had comics and things, but I was just attracted by everything. I mean, I watched television extensively, like most of us did. Nobody, they talk about how kids watch, the phones and stuff. We used to watch television the same way. We just had limited time because television was on. But, that was the only way I got to see movies as a child. So I saw a lot of movies. And then hearing my father's comments was almost like having my own running commentary in the house. And so I would hear how he would approach or see things, or my mother see things, and then that really influenced me. Then I would take it and draw, which blew them away. Right. One, it scared him, like he was listening. And 2, this is what he saw when he listened. This is how it came out. And that's when my mother realized he's special. He's doing something. And the first major critique I had as an artist was kindergarten. I tell the story a lot, but it's damn true. I wish I kept this art, but it's gone. It's lost in antiquity. But I was in kindergarten class. I clearly remember the construction paper, and I'm drawing, and they want us to draw the damn flowers. They want to draw the cute shit, and I took off. I was excited because I had colors that I didn't have at home, and I had this piece of paper, and I had this vision. And my old man and I had just watched this Western, famous Western at the time called They Die With Their Boots On. It's the General Custer versus the Sioux Indian story. Very famous. It's Battle of Little Bighorn. And a terrible movie, but at the time, exciting. And hearing my father's version of it. And then right after that, we watched War of the Worlds. So here I am at 6 going, yeah, I want to do this. So I drew Custer's Last Stand with the Sioux Indians fighting each other, as well as the Martian tripods.
That's hard. That's hard.
You did Cowboys and Aliens.
Scared it's Cowboys and Aliens, way before Cowboys and Aliens. Scared the hell out of the kindergarten teacher. The next thing I know, my parents were asked to come to class, to come to see the principal. They were acting like I was being shown not quite pornography, but this isn't right. He's 6 years old. Why is he watching this? And I remember my mother clearly went, he's an artist. Because my mother could read, so she wasn't an idiot. And so when they were trying to question her, like, you let him look at this? Because he knows exactly what he's looking at. We're right there with him. And this is how he interpreted it. And that's when he's an artist. And that shut all the arguments up.
Can I ask you a question? Was this a black school or a white school?
This was I didn't see a white school until I went to college. This is a neighborhood Detroit school that's now gone. But
because the only reason why I asked was because when you made the statement about my mother could read, so that's how it gets,
Well, I'm gonna date myself because I don't give a shit anymore.
But it's what we're supposed to do. We gotta have the history. We talked about getting history right.
This is a very good question, man, because that was Detroit Public Schools, and it was I lived about 2 blocks from my home, but this is Detroit, not Detroit. Detroit. Ghetto. Everybody's black. Most of the teachers are white. So this principal was white. The kindergarten teacher was white. Remember her name. She wasn't as freaked out. It perplexed her. She didn't know how to deal with it. I heard words gifted and all this shit thrown around. I never accepted it. But again, my mother, because she was a housewife, and this was the 60s, they expect women who are housewives to be smart. They're supposed to just stay home and wash dishes and clean, cook for the house. Right. My mother was an extensive reader. My mother taught me to read on her lap. And she read novels, not only to herself, to the family. Sometimes television got boring. Mom would tell us what she's reading. Right. She didn't just tell us. She basically was narrating the damn book, and that was fascinating. Right. So you didn't hear about this in Black homes? No, of course not. So here she was, and when she had to defend it, that shut them up because they realized, oh hell, this woman not only reads, she's articulate. She doesn't look like she should be articulate. And we're talking about her gifted son, so now we kind of get an idea. And so that's a good question, man, because a lot of people, this is where
I tried, but that's
another good question. I have not been asked that. I've told that story before, but no one's turning around and goes, okay, where were you? Well, that was my environment, and that was the thing that was fascinating because when I zeroed in on comics, and that was like a couple of years later. Because
how did you then transition into professional? At what point did you decide I'm going to do this for a living?
At 8,
wow,
probably 7. I mean, like I said, I was zeroed in. I had no idea where to go, no idea. But I drew and drew and drew all day. And I didn't have formal art classes until I got maybe 4th grade. And even then, it was still stuff that was, when I look at it now, it's like, it's amazing to me that I got where I am from where I came from. I didn't have special, later on I had a teacher who recognized it, and this was like middle school by then. And, but, as far as even the special art classes were kind of anemic. They were sad. It was like maybe 6 of us in a room after school. We got to draw something. We got to play around with this or that, but it wasn't a art focus. It was an art. It was like one of many curriculums they make you go through. No different than English. No different than home. We used to call it homeroom. But it was like that. But I kept getting noticed. I kept going outside the lines, literally. And so they had to try to find ways to address that. And then I had teachers who recognized it, and then they went out of their way to help me address that. They went out of their way to bring stuff in for me to read and go to special after school things. And that helped a lot. That was very influential. But in the back of my mind, all the time, I thought of comics. I love illustration. I was discovering that, but comics, man. You know?
What was your first professional job doing?
First professional job, literally, first time I got money, and it wasn't a lot, but it was good. Was a company called New Media. Oh, I knew I should have wrote that down. They were a fan magazine and they were small publishing, fan publishing that was trying to be like a comics journal. And then they were putting out their own kind of little books here. And the guy in charge of it was an artist wannabe who was making some noise, getting into Marvel and DC and getting to know people. But he was also a self-publisher of his own thing. I won't name him because he's not exactly a friend, and I'm not gonna advertise him. So because he tried some things that obviously didn't work, but at the time, he did hire me to do. It was one of their magazines. I think it was called Comics Feature, and he had me do a cover of the Legion. And by this time, we were all living in Boston. How I got to Boston, long story short, Keith told me I need to get out of Detroit. I need to get to New York. And I found ways to get closer to New York. I couldn't get directly into New York, so I moved to Boston.
When you say Keith, do you mean Keith Pollard?
Keith Pollard, yeah. Keith Pollard. I tracked him down after college and found out who he was. And the rest we'll go into later. But to make this story short, my first job, here's some money, and I think I got $50 for everything, was I got the cover. I got to do a full page. I illustrated an article on Tarzan because I loved Tarzan. That was one of the first things I learned how to read as a child. And so I did the art on a Russ Manning Tarzan. He was one of my favorite artists, so this was perfect. So I did that. And I also got to do a full page of John Carter of Mars, another favorite thing I've read. I actually tried to sell that to Comics Journal. Not sell. Comics Journal used to take in fan art, and if they liked it, they'd publish it. I don't think they paid you. Now I remember they didn't, but you got the prestige of being in Comics Journal.
Right.
And I remember doing 2 pieces, and they ridiculed one. And when I tell you what it is, you're gonna love it. But they ridiculed one, saying this will never happen. This will never ever happen in the comic book world, and we're a Comics Journal, so we're not gonna go down that way. And I'm like, cool. And then I did the John Carter of Mars, and he took it. And I was that one was very influenced by Gil Kane's approach. So I was a sponge as a kid. I mean, there was a lot of artists who made me who I am, and whoever I was inspired by, he would come out through my art. And I wasn't just mimicking them; I was literally studying them, trying to figure out why would you do this. It was something you said, Paul, earlier off camera, which funny when you were saying about this Patton punch. And I remember as a fan guy.
No, save that for later.
Okay, all right, I'll save that later. But anyway, it was leading into this. But anyway, long story short, that was my first job. So when I got those and I got my little copy, that went into my portfolio to take to DC to show them what I was capable of doing.
So let's talk about that. You are considered one of DC Comics' most definitive artists, particularly.
Who said that? Really?
Anybody who's read DC Comics.
All right.
Particularly the Justice League.
Okay.
This run of Justice League was unique in that they decided to move away from the Justice League formula of all white team and throw some colors in it. Be an alien or woman or people of color. This is their first foray into doing that.
Well, let me correct you there. That was not an editorial decision. Lin Wing was one of my mentors. He was my sensei. It wasn't like Lynn. Lynn didn't say, "Go out and get me. I want to integrate color into this." He didn't.
Well,
say
that was my question. That was my question is how did this become so integrated at that
that's
time?
why it's interesting because Jerry Conway came back, and Lynn wanted me to shake things up anyway. He was always encouraging me to shake things up. And we also were being shook up as a company because Crisis was coming. Marv was already laying down the lines. And that was both exciting and sad because we knew a lot of the characters I grew up with were going to get killed off. A lot of the characters I wanted to play with were going to get killed off. But it opened the door for us to bring in new things. Prior to that, DC had tried or talked about doing this before. And that was led to the famous DC implosion, which messed up a lot of things. That was a negative thing. And a lot of good characters got sidelined or forgotten or, sidelined in the sense that they didn't throw it away. They just put them aside and then people forgot because they were too busy fighting for what they were doing in the front books, which was, hey, I'm doing Flash. Hey, I'm doing Batman. I'm going to keep these sales going. And then you saw one dip over the other. And then that's when Marv came up with the Crisis. The whole idea editorially was that DC's history was too much. And all this continuity, all this stuff was not helping move the books. So now we got to find a way to move the books. Let's move some characters out who ain't moving books. And when I'm telling you all this, because what it did do was open the door to new ideas. Open the door to, hey, let's look on that shelf and see what's available. Jerry always had Vixen. He already had her created. And that was the first one he had talked to me about when he was coming back on the book. Because he also realized Jerry left the book. And when he decided to come back, it's because he got inspired of, okay, wait a minute, if you're going to allow me to do this with Justice League, because you wouldn't let me do this before, I'm going to go nuts now. So he came to me and went, I want to make this colorful. Let's go rainbow, And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And because I'm a rookie, I'm just happy to be there. I already been on the book about a year earlier, just trying to keep it going.
How did you break into DC?
Well, that was, okay, I'm trying to keep the story simple, but all right, let's go back to when I did that magazine work. How I got that is because the guy who was running it was getting with Dick and a couple other people, and Dick had gave him the first idea for the new talent showcase.
And you mean Dick Giordano?
Dick Giordano. I should say, thank you for correcting. Dick Giordano, who was the mentor's mentor, my true sensei.
Yeah.
Dick always had this idea of bringing in new people. And then the people he brought in were a variety. The whole idea was to have a class of 30. And out of that 30, in a perfect world, all of them were going to be professionals and come out. But he also knew maybe a handful will. And truth of the matter, off and on, it did. There were a several handful of people came out. I'll name names. You'll go, oh, yeah. But I came into, let's say, the second team. I felt like it was either the third or second team. Maybe it was the second team of people he had coming in. And he was going through people, meaning that he'll bring them in and train them, and then he'll give you a test. And you don't know if that test is going to get you some work, or he would just say, this isn't going to work out. He didn't mind if you even took the work you were doing for him, went to Marvel and got work. That happened too for some people.
Yeah.
He was interested in getting new blood in. That was the thing I give Dick total credit, which was amazing. Because back then it was just, it took me many years to figure out how to break into comics. I'm cutting through a lot of stuff to get to your questions. But the truth was, until I found Keith and I had to hunt for Keith, I had no idea how I was going to break in this business. But by that time, when I'm getting out of college, I was hungry. I was desperate. I wanted this. I saw my future clear as a comic book artist. There was no place to go. We didn't have this network of fans. We can do this. There was networks of fandom where some people got close to professionals, and that was one way of doing it. That's the best. You're lucky if you ran into them at a convention. It used to be the old day. You bring your portfolio. DC or Marvel will have people, editors there, and they'll look over your shit. Some lucky and got work. Some got told to go home.
What's interesting, there is a number of creators that. Oops, I don't know how we got there. There's a number. I'll let my producer handle that. There's a number of creators.
I like that one. That one was dope.
That was 70s, So anyway. Oh
There's
yeah.
a number of creators that were sort of contemporaries of yours around that same time period, between 5 years or so. You mentioned one, Keith Pollard. There's others like Arvell Jones and Ron Wilson, Dennis Cowan.
I don't want to denigrate, but I do want to put it in better context than that. They weren't my contemporaries; they were my elders.
Right.
In other words, these guys were already working at most 10 years before I got it. Well, 5 years, I think, in terms of Ron, for sure. Keith and Arvell and a couple other names, they were already there. I mean, they've already done their thing. So
one of the things that we've discovered in doing interviews, particularly with Dennis Cowan, was the idea of mentorship. Milestone Comics is big on mentorship, is helping the next generation come up, and hearing your story about Dick Giordano trying to be a mentor to the next generation of upcoming artists. But you had the added factor, instead of just simply being a young artist who's have a mentor, but also being Black. Can you talk about the struggles or challenges involved in being a Black artist in this time period?
Okay. First, thanks to my father, I was always taught, if I focused on just that, I'm limiting myself, I'm handicapping myself. And he was a man who had to work in a very white dominated world and survive. And so coming up, my father in his stories would tell me, these are the people you're going to meet in the world. I want you to meet better, but this is where you got to meet them. You're always going to be the fly in the buttermilk. What you have to be is show them by your efforts that you're equal. You can't ask and demand it. You can try, but it's better if you do it. And that'll freak them out. You be of service so that, you get through the door. I'm not talking about being of service that you're, I'm so beholden to you, but you find and learn their tricks. And later, when I got into college, I met a gentleman and took a class with him who wrote this amazing book that blew my freaking mind because it was what my father was talking about, but also very subversive. It's called The Spook Who Sat by the Door. Sam Greenlee was doing a tour of the book. And this was years after the movie was made, but it was still this phenomenal book that just would not go away. I was blown away by it because I had never met a Black author who did speculative work, not just speculative work, fiction like that. I've heard of all, of course, James Baldwin, Mary Lou, Maya Angelou, Lorraine Lansbury. I mean, all these people we've heard, but they were doing fiction, but they weren't doing the stuff that I liked. That was the thing. You asked about comic book artists. I wanted to be in fiction. I wanted to be doing fantastic stuff. We have a point of view, meaning Black people. I know we did. Again, my father told me stories that inspired me. I'll go into that another time. But I wanted that. And I didn't meet people until I read this book. And I met him. It was like, dude, And it also blew away the regular publishers because if you ever read the book, it's an incredible thriller. It's a great spy novel, but it is a subversive handbook on how to get to the man. That's the title, Spook Who Sat by the Door. So that book always inspired the hell out of me. So I knew I need to get in there. I can't focus on how many of us are in there. It's great when we are. Like, I remember in my class, there may have been one other Black person there other than myself, but we had a lot of women, diverse. It's diverse for the mid '80s. That's pretty damn good.
Do you recall other people that were in your class? The names of
the ones who had graduated, I remember. One was Jan Buscema. She was really very highly looked on at that time. They loved what she was doing. She was moving up. They already started a book around her, and that was I can't think of the name. Starts with an A. Arion. They're already working on Arion for her. Another guy was Kim DeMotor. I don't know another name. He was he was actually one that Dick really wanted to keep at DC, but then he showed his stuff at Marvel when he came in. I remember him saying, Marvel wants to hire me, and Dick was like, look, if it gets you in the business, then my job is done. So don't feel like some Don't go in there and think in divisions of, you know, oh, you're DC and Marvel. No, you're a working artist. That was also another thing that hit me about being a professional. Okay, again, how to comport yourself, how to show yourself as a professional. I wanted to show that I was a damn good artist, that I can draw just black, white, Chinese, whatever. That's meaning a good artist. If I just focused on being a black artist, I think I would have been putting a target on my back, so that anybody who wanted to screw with me, you know, they can always shuffle you over.
Right.
Let's talk about that. Let me
Sure.
let's look at this.
Okay.
What I love about your art is something very simple. One of the reasons why I think the Justice League book is so cool as an example of your art is it's a team book, right? So you have a myriad of characters to draw. You have a huge cast, and some of these characters are very well known. Your art style, as I said, I mentioned names like Neil Adams and John Romita Sr., Dick Giordano. You can see all of those influences in your art. Like, I look at this and I'm like, that's just as good as these other guys, these guys that are considered legends in the game. And I'm like, this is the same type of level of artwork I'm saying. Look at the detail of these rocks. Look at the expressions on the faces that you're doing. The movement, the fact that you've got Zatanna in the background and you've got Elongated Man in the foreground. It adds movement to this picture, right?
Well, that's the job, isn't it?
It is. Not everybody.
Oh, seriously, let me take it away, because it's almost a little. I got to give you my perspective of that. I appreciate your perspective, but I'm the guy that drew it, so I got to tell you, one of the things about it again was, as an artist, what I learned from the class, what I learned coming up, is about we're storytellers.
Right.
Isn't a word we used a lot then, but now we do. Now we understand it. You tell the story. Telling a story is being clear. Telling a story is getting things on model. Telling the story was bringing in a certain passion, certain attitude. And this is way before I understood animation. When I was doing this, and the other guys who were doing it, we all had a version of this. The thing that Dick kept hitting us was that you should look at this and it tells the story without any of the word balloons being there. As far as the details go, there were some people who were much more heavily detailed than I was. And I noticed with them, when they were overly detailed, what they missed was the composition of the story. They didn't draw the figures right because they were so crazy about that belt buckle. They wanted to get that sheen in.
Right.
To me, this was like, that's not important. I want to get across the feeling, like you just said. Wow, Zatanna's coming in here. Elongated Man's there. It's motion, it's power. We're telling a story. It's a static scene. My biggest worry always been, God, am I too static? Meaning, is it too boring? Is guys just stiff? Now, it's funny, that page that you got up right now,
yeah,
I was crazy. I mean, it drove me nuts, but I was very proud of it.
You should be.
I was telling a story, and I remember the script didn't have a lot of detail in it. And that's why I stopped you, because, again, as this is what we learn when you do it right, how to tell the story.
If I could say something, I think one of the things that I always liked about Brother Patton, and I'll say it again, I mean, to the point where I hit him up and I asked for a commission. I felt like with his artwork, there's never any confusion as into what's going on, right? And I think that sometimes he has the ability to do, and I think it kind of goes back to what Paul's saying a little bit. I feel like you had that ability to do this ensemble, right? You know what each character is, regardless of what the panel is. You know where they are. You have the distinct things about them, and it's never a cluttered situation, regardless of how many play. Like that one panel has what, almost like 10 characters in it, but it's clear what's going on. So I think a lot of artists, and I'm not saying everybody has different styles, right? So everybody has different styles.
Right.
But I feel like there's some artists where you're looking and you're not sure what's going on. So you have to go, and also there's nothing wrong with studying a page because it can just be so dope and in depth that you got it, whatever. You know what I mean? But I feel like when I look at Brother Patton's art, I just feel like, you know, you're getting what's there. Like I feel like as a kid, when you pull this book off the shelf, when you go into the newsstand and you pull it off the stands and you're begging your mom or your dad for a comic, you see the cover. Oh, I know what's going to be inside of this. When I open this up, I'm getting exactly, you know, what I want. Like you're able to be drawn right into exactly, you know, what's going on. So for me, it's always, when I look at the style, it's the precision. I don't have to guess what's going on. I can, you know, I can either focus on the art, the story, and or both. And like you said, it's one of those things where there were times as kids when we would read the comics and not necessarily look at the words, but you can still get the story from start to finish, if that makes any sense.
It does. One thing in particular about that one too, and I'm glad you put that one up, was again the script. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of stuff going on about that particular page that jumps at me, and it's funny that that's clearer to me than probably the last production I was on. That I was. You mentioned all those great names of people, Ramita, and you know, I forgot, but Ramita jumps out because he was one of the few that I never got to meet who I absolutely love. And again, as this art sponge, having nobody formally teach me, I looked at all these artists and saw their strengths, and it helped me understand again what I needed to do, what I wanted to achieve, what I had to do, why they do what they did. Why Ramita would draw things especially with women. I mean, he was just a masterful artist. Sure. Men too, but women. That was his. Right. He just knew it. Whether it was action, whether it was romance. Because I read a lot of romance books, by the way, gentlemen. You can learn a lot about storytelling from romance books. But anyway, and that's how I learned who Buscema was. Long before he got Conan, long before Avengers, long before I think he got Avengers first. But anyway. Again, I looked at everybody and I saw their strengths. And you can see their strengths by buying their books week after week or month after month. And it fascinated me. And then I did the thing that our first art lesson as young rookies, fans, is you copy. You copy it, not just to copy the art, but to understand it.
Right.
Most of us didn't have the words. That was the thing I loved about that class, by the way. And I know I'm jumping around a lot, Paul, but you bring us. The thing I loved about the class was this is the first time I'm with guys who are at my caliber. Not necessarily one was better than the other, but we're all there for the same reason. I haven't had a feeling like that since I was a kid, and I used to draw comic books with my brother. We used to make our own comics. But now here I am older. And I'm with these people, and we're all hungry. We're all going for it. And then we'll go out after the class, not only digest what Dick was saying, but we throw back and forth stuff in people we like. Right. What was great about them? What was weak about them? And again, went into the old soft computer, filing it away of, all right, next time you do a crowd scene, think about how Herb Trimpe would do it. Think about how George Tusker would draw this. Oh, by the way, get that angle on the face because that's a Romita face.
Right.
I was leading up to. Like that shot of Power Girl. That was my lane with Tim and a Romita face. Because I wanted that tilt in the head that women would get when they think you're not looking at them, they doing that little thing. Because that whole page, as I saw the story, who gives a shit about the rest of the Justice League? This is Firestorm pining away for Power Girl.
Right.
He's the teenager. He's the left man out. That's why I put him in the foreground. And again, this was stuff I was learning. Anybody else would just lump them all together. I wanted to go, no, he's got to feel out.
Right.
He's zeroing in on her, and he's trying to be cool, and he doesn't know how to be cool. And the only guy who's kind of noticing it is that damn robot. I knew in Justice League we didn't have interpersonal relationships like that, played up as strong. Oh, they did here and there. You can go back in the Justice League, some of the Dick Dillon stuff, and they show in the beginning of the Firestorm Power Girl thing. But what I wanted to do was expand it to a new audience. And Star Wars was big. And what's big in Star Wars? Droids.
Right.
So I gave Justice League a droid.
What's cool is
that wasn't in the script.
in your description of this page, you literally don't need to read any of these word bubbles to know exactly what's going on. And as you said, that's indeed storytelling.
That's part of our job when you do it right. That was the hard thing, is trying to decide how to do it right. That's my George Perez homage.
Can I ask a question about that previous page? Go back just 1 more second. I know we don't want to stay on it forever. So I think people missed the point that you said that the droid was not in the script.
Yeah.
And you threw that. How did that come? I know you said from Star Wars, but can you so were the editors upset that you threw him in and he wasn't on script, or did they not know he was in the script? Did the writer have an issue with it, or?
I went through a real, again, this page brings a lot of memories back. Lynn, my sensei, when I told him what I was going to do, his feeling, one was the grin of, oh, this is going to be good. The writer didn't do this. So how are you going to get the writer to do this? Well, he knew how. But I didn't know I stepped on toes. I just knew I was exciting. I felt this. I think we need this. And he did say something about there's a droid there, but I want this guy to be a specific droid we're going to see. He's a story. He's going to be a story point. I'm not using the same words I used then. I just said, I want to have this little guy be the only guy he talks to. Like that.
Right.
Then that. So then went, all right, how are you going to do it? And I'm like, and he goes, I tell you how you're going to do it. You're going to write it in the indicia, what you want. And that way the writer, because he knows when the writer gets the artwork, all they care about is what they had in the outline. They just going to start typing. But they get lost sometimes. So long before a lot of us got into comics, this is what Stan and the Marvel artists did back in the day. I learned this from Don Heck.
The Marvel way.
Yeah, the Marvel way. They write in the indicia the entire story. You can see it in Jack Kirby's work. It's right there. Jack was probably the first to start doing it. And so I did that, and all of a sudden, Shorty, as we wound up calling him, appeared in the story. So, oh, it's Jazz. He went, oh, fuck, he used his name. He didn't quite use it the way I wanted it. And then I realized, because, as I was told later, well, you're not the writer, are you? But I did imply what I wanted in the story. And then that's when I realized, we're not just following the damn scripts. We are as equal creators of this thing. Right. So that was my first big lesson, as well as also not a disappointment, but I saw how far I can push and how far I can get away with, and how much I didn't get away with, but I still got them in there. Right. And then later learned from Jerry, hey, that stuff can be made money, because who's saying somebody come back and make Shorty another character? If somebody uses Shorty, all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, that's a cast character. Wait a minute, who created this? And he was like, always make sure that you get your name on this thing. So that was one of the big lessons I learned from him.
The other thing that was great about this Justice League series, as I mentioned before, because it's an ensemble cast,
right?
It gave you the opportunity to draw a myriad of characters. Mm-hmm. And what becomes clearly evident for anyone who's looked at your art over the years, your body of work, you can literally draw anything, anyone. Like, there's not a single character. I remember even just scrolling through your Instagram page, and you just draw stuff for fun, just random characters. And there's not a single commission work you've done, character you've done professionally. You've done such a myriad of characters, and you literally can draw anything.
Well,
any character, and make it dope.
I try. That's how I put it. I haven't been asked enough. I mean, I was telling Phil this. I am not asked enough to do Marvel characters. And when I started, when I got to the place where I can start drawing more for myself, one of the first things I drew were the guys I wanted to draw. So I did a Namor. And it's bad enough most of the young guys thought, is that Mr. Spock with muscles? Because no, dude, that's Namor. That's the way he was back in the day when I drew him. That's what I wanted to draw. I didn't care about the ponytail guy. I didn't care about the guy in the suit that Byrne did. I did the way I saw him when I first got blown away by John Buscema drawing him, and then later Gene Colan. That was my Namor. And but I always did try to, again, whatever I drew, I try to pay homage to the person who drew it first that influenced me. So thank you. I mean, I try, man. I mean, I am not asked enough to draw enough different characters.
So let me ask you this. Since we're talking about that,
yeah,
for everybody that's in the chat or who's watching, are you taking commissions now?
I always do. Yeah.
So peoples, you know, when we're done, make sure you hit him up on his IG, get his commission price, get a one-on-one piece from Brother Patton. Like this is your opportunity. You know, I'm always screaming about getting original art. We got enough. I don't care if one or two people jump on there, go to his IG. The man is a monster. Now, I wouldn't be telling you to do something if I ain't never did it myself. So this is the perfect segue. So
here we go.
And he was one of the first people to be in collections in black. We'll talk about that later. So this is, you know, the Winter Soldier and T'Challa are like my two favorite characters. And this was actually possibly the second piece of original art that I ever purchased. Besides for the Black Panther piece. And he did Black Panther, and he did the Winter Soldier for me. And you know, this was in the big room, and I was gonna say, Brother Patton, man, I was glad to display this in collections in black. People have seen this all over the world, and I encourage everybody, well, if you can, and listen, you know, original art ain't cheap, y'all. So don't be trying to get a piece for $50, man. Don't disrespect the brother like that, man. But you know, hit him up, and I'm sure he'll come up with a fair price. Please do not ask what the price is. We're not doing that today. But I would just say, man, you know, we got to make sure we do right by our own. And we got him right here, right now. This is Brother Patton, man. He's created some of the best characters ever. He's done your favorite cartoons. We're gonna get into that. But like he just said, he is taking commissions. So hit him up, get your favorite, you know, character done. And like he said twice, he's not asked to do Marvel characters enough because he's known for DC characters. So I'm gonna be down. I'm gonna take back the Paul. I apologize for taking up so much time, but Patton knows I love his art, and I put my money where my mouth is, and I made sure I got me a commission. And once again, and I appreciate it too, man. You knocked that out the box for me. Thank you so much.
That was a pleasure to do. You know, we were talking a lot about that. The only thing I feel bad about is that you want a classic T'Challa. I gave you real classic T'Challa by putting the cape on.
With the cape on. Hey, listen, he got the cape.
I had to. I was compelled. You know, so I'm old school. First time T'Challa. I think we talked about this because you were telling me about your dad's collection, and I was like, oh yeah, but I remember when it first hit the street in Detroit, and we saw this dude, and it was like, who is this dude? Black Panther. There was, I don't think any other character in my memory among my little group of fans, when you said Black Panther, that's all you needed to say. We knew who he was. We knew he wasn't going to be some Batman type character. We just knew he was going to be something. And then, of course, you found out he's a ruler and he's a country and his whole country is more than this. Then that's just like, oh, hell, this is icing on the cake now. We got this.
We're gonna come back to Black Panther because that's an important point.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'm diverging, man. Stop me, Phil. This is
no. Check, we going, man. I know he's going with this, and we're gonna circle back around.
We're gonna circle back to that.
Okay.
So looking at your work, I came across this issue. This is Justice League. I think it's like 221 or something like that. Superman, Wonder Woman. The other thing cool about you doing the Justice League series, it allowed you the opportunity to work on the Trinity. You know, although I don't think Batman was part of this particular.
No, he had quit and got damn Outsiders by that.
Yeah, he was with the Outsiders.
This is Outsiders Batman, right? During this,
he wasn't quite at what they were talking about it, because I remember the official Outsiders came just as Crisis was coming together.
Okay,
yeah.
We're just doing the first Crisis, so we knew they were gonna split them off anyway.
I consider this issue to be a low-level key.
Really?
And why is it a low-level key?
Wait. Go back for a second. Go back for a second.
No. I've ordered the cat's already out.
I got a big surprise for you guys but I want to hear your.
It's a low-level key because it is, in my opinion, the first kiss between Superman and Wonder Woman. Now, if you Google first kiss between Superman and Wonder Woman, it usually comes up with Action Comics 600, which came out in 1988.
Mm-hmm.
But this is from 1983, 5 years earlier. Now, technically speaking, he's giving her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation because she got knocked out. But it is the first depiction of his lips on her lips. I consider it the first kiss.
Mhm.
That makes this a low-level key.
Mm.
I mean, we got this image of Superman, Clark on the left.
Let me go buy
He's
that right
looking
now.
into her eyes. She's like, "What's going on? Why is Clark kissing me?" He's like, "Oh, no, it's just mouth to mouth, mouth to mouth." And it's like, this is the first time I've seen this. So that's what I thought was coming about this issue.
Well, it brings a lot of great memories.
Kevin Pitts says he kissed her and she threw up.
Well, literally, he's right. He's absolutely right. Let me tell you the evolution of this, believe it or not, without, and you ask me questions about it and then we can elaborate. That particular issue was going to be my first JLA issue.
Nice.
That was the one where when they finally put me on the book, Don had moved on, Don Heck had moved on. And this was going to be my first official. Jerry, and that's the sad part is when I was penciling this, Jerry made the decision then to take a hiatus from the book, from the series and altogether. And so that threw us in a real, and I remember bringing these pages in so proud and then going, I got good news and bad news. You're still the artist on JLA, but your first issue, we're putting this sucker on the shelf. And I'm like, but. And this was like, dude, and you gotta realize I wanted this scene so bad because Jerry, I was enjoying his writing at that time because he was still doing it the Marvel way. He would just outline it. Jerry gave me all the implications about the scene. He didn't tell me how to do the scene. Just that I want Superman to look like he's kissing her, and we want to make them think that they were. And he wrote it like French kissing, and then you realize she was drowning. So I knew, okay, so we got to play a game of misdirection, and obviously work because you're going, yeah, he's kissing her. He's like, no, man, he's trying to give her breath, and she puked. So, but I love it because it was again storytelling. That's what it was teaching me. Yeah. And the way Jerry wrote it, it gave me room to learn how to put this together. What I don't like about heavily scripted scenes, and I learned later why I didn't, because it was telling me what to do instead of allowing me to discover it. And if you're telling everything, and again, as I got in animation, that's a different thing. Telling people, okay, scene right, left, they're in the center of the scene, blah, 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 blah. Then yeah, tell us all that. But in comics, give the damn artist some credit.
Right.
Let them come up and just say, I want this to feel uncomfortable. That's all I needed to say. So that scene was very proud. I was very proud of that. But this entire scene was pushed back 6 months.
So another thing that pops up, I saw this particular issue. Now this issue had a lot of action because it's basically a Colosseum, like Roman Colosseum of replica. I think call them replica men, where you have these human animal hybrids and they're all battling in this gladiatorial arena. It's a lot of action scenes.
Right.
I started to notice a trend in your art.
Okay.
In these action scenes, you see this lion guy punching this panther guy, and the lion guy gets blown back. Right? And I'm looking through these other comics, and here's one woman getting punched by Rhino guy. She's getting blown back. The same pose, like the heads kick back and they're flying through the air. And then I'm seeing more punch, flying back. Punch, kick, flying back. And oftentimes the people that you have punched, always have this thing where they turn upside down, the head flies back. Like these are massive punches to knock somebody off their feet. And routinely in your art, the person who is punched is thrown into a wall or some object that breaks. And so I have declared, in my opinion, because we keep coming up with names for your stuff, your seafood Patton,
where were you 40 years ago? Go on, keep going.
It was my comic collection was a lot smaller and less budget. I have declared this is called the Patton Punch. Hashtag Patton Punch.
Patton Punch.
Because it is in every look, I'm looking through all these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Every single issue has a Patton Punch.
Yeah, no,
it is your signature action scene move.
Well, thank you.
I mean, you said you like martial arts films.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like as I'm watching your action scenes, I'm hearing the sound effects. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a kung fu flick.
Mm-hmm.
Because you punch somebody in a kung fu flick, they fly back.
Fly back, right? Yeah, right. Well, here again, I said again, and I'm going to reiterate it. There's a word for this. It's really simple. And I can even tell you the origin of that word, for personal origin with that word. It's impact.
Okay.
You gotta have an impact. You got to put, I was going to say, how do you feel when you see this? And you already said it. You know, people are flying back. They're bouncing off walls. You feel it. That's what I want you to feel. Because it's static work. How else you do it? As a kid, when I drew, and even now, I mean, there was a time in one of the studios, I caught one of the guys boarding something. I heard these little noises in his cubicle, and I was cracking up going, I wish I can go back in time and show my little self, this grown man doing exactly what we always do. When you draw this stuff, you're doing the sound effects.
Right. Exactly.
Because that's what keeps you in the mood, that keeps you in the zone, that keeps you focused. And we still do it. I still do it. When I drew those things, I did it because I wanted to make sure that I was bringing that into it. And if you're drawing it quietly, I feel like, hey, you're not feeling it. But when you put, when you're putting that there, I don't know how many times we used to sit there and go, okay, why did they write crash when it should have been crash, something like that. And then you realize everybody hears things differently, but it has made an effect on our lives that we now think that way. You think in terms of sound effects. So that impact is what sells comics. Yeah. Now, Paris Cullis and I, back in the day, long back in the day, after the New Talent stuff, and he and I used to hang out, we'd go to 42nd Street and watch whatever new kung fu film was there. And then we'd argue about power and how he would go on about, and he was more so, I think he was the guy that talked me into finally looking. I loved Kirby, but I didn't hear what Paris was, or see what Paris was talking about until I watched Paris go off on him. Kirby was all about power. And he did exactly what you did. Look at this panel, power. Look at that panel, power. And pretty soon I'm doing the same thing with power. And then you start putting it into your work or looking where you can imply it into your work. Lots of times, the guy who taught me more about drawing punches, still, I think to this day, still is the definitive. Hey, how do you draw a great punch? Sal Buscema.
Yes.
It sounds like the mouth thing, and it's crack you up. But you know what? You cannot deny there is power and impact, and somebody's going to fly against the wall. Something's going to get broken by the way he drew it. And that was influential. This is, again, breaking it all down, fundamentals of storytelling. Because when you draw that, you don't have to have the sound effect. But sound effects is actually a part of art, too.
So in maintaining the theme of storytelling, there's different types of storytelling. There's the most obvious sense of conveying the narrative of fiction that you're trying to do in a comic book. But there's also the storytelling of the individual. And you've had the opportunity to help develop some characters in this run or in other runs at DC. Most notably, one of my favorite characters at DC Comics, which is Vixen, which is, I literally have a picture of her above my head.
Okay, yeah.
That's done by Karen Grant. She's literally one of my favorite DC characters. I absolutely love this character, and she's, I think she's one of the most underrated characters. That's an underutilized characters at DC. But your run helped define the character. I mean, she was created in Action Comics, but it was this run that really gave her exposure in DC Comics, making her a member of the Justice League, showing she had leadership skills to an extent, defining her as a superhero. She would later go on to Suicide Squad, but
Right.
this is the run that defined her as a hero. So when she moved over to Suicide Squad, they knew her as a hero because of this experience.
Good.
You developed in this run, you helped shape and define the character. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, again, this was one of Jerry's. He loved this character. I mean, this was one that he always felt was exactly what you were saying. That she was never given her chance because of the implosion, and he got one of the best girl artists, one of the best who I admired too, Bob Osner, to do the original design. And again, just bringing it real, Bob made her a typical superhero. But what he missed was the things that when Jerry was telling me about it, and Jerry see me get excited, he goes, "What, Chuck? What?" And I'm like, "Well, dude, it's kind of obvious. This woman's a force of nature. She should feel animalistic. She's, to my mind, literally Wolverine, the female version of Wolverine without all the craziness and all the rage. But her ferocity should be evident in her costume and look. You should see her silhouette and go, ooh." This is when I learned the power of silhouette, because I learned this from Dick, just from drawing Batman. Batman shows up, he doesn't have to say shit. Stand in the shadows, those pointed ears, that cape, you know exactly what it is. Even more than Superman. And so the silhouette was real on my mind. And the original Vixen had no real silhouette. And she was wearing a costume that was, quite honestly, neon. Light blue and green, light blue and yellow. What part of Vixen is that?
Yeah.
Vixen's a fox. They're red. They blend into the environment. She was also a Bantu, a deity based off of that. So I wanted to bring that earthiness to her. That's what it said to me. Earthiness in the sense of, okay, she is literally, an extension of African mythology. So let's bring that into that. So Jerry inspired me to, or you can call it encourage me to change her, to get her more into that. And so
whose decision was it to give her the beads and the braids?
That was me.
Yeah.
Nice.
Jerry enjoyed it. Again, I said to him, I made the pitch of she should feel African. She's an African person. She should have this, back in that time. Remember, the dreads and all that came out of African fashion.
Right.
And 10 kind of made it okay for white women to wear. But, up until that point, only sisters wore that. So I wanted to make that clear. This is who she is. Because at that point, again, not only the yellow and blue neon outfit, she was wearing almost like a wig. She was no different than Batgirl.
Right.
Batgirl bat mask, that with bat mask. The Vixen mask, again, wasn't played. Bob didn't play it. And again, I don't blame him. That's his experience. That's what he does. Again, you want to draw some great romance, you get Bob Osler. But this wasn't a romantic character. We wanted to make her a two-fisted, badass superhero who's basically taking the place of Batman. And
I mean, just for context, right?
Right.
She at the time was DC's. I can't think of another black female superhero at DC Comics as prominent as her, because she's a member of the Justice League. It's one of the most prominent books they had at the time.
Well, before Justice League too, the whole thing was he was trying to really roll her off into her own book. Again, the whole implosion just messed up. Someone tried to write a book. I'm going to put that in the year of.
Yeah, I remember seeing the original artwork production of what the cover for that Vixen series was going to be.
Yeah.
That ended up getting canceled, unfortunately. But at the time, you've got Marvel, you got DC.
Right.
Vixen is the most prominent black female superhero at DC Comics. Over at Marvel, you've probably got a tie, or I don't know if a tie, but you're depending on what side of the fence you are, you're either Storm or Monica Rambeau.
Stop it. It's Storm. Stop. You making up stuff, Paul. You making up shit.
I said based on
there is no side of the fence.
All right, fine.
Storm
is the number one character, black female character in Marvel Comics.
Well, one thing about Storm that was a lot stronger, because also you may be Monica Rambeau, but you also miss Misty Knight, and Misty by herself was her own genre. the thing I like about that, and see, this is again what Jerry and I in our conversations at the beginning. That's what I missed. I missed the beginning of what we did with JLA. I just wish we were able to keep that spirit within the series. That's another story. But at the beginning of this, when we were talking about it, I went back, hearing him out, and now he's got a young artist with this energy. I pulled out those things that he couldn't articulate to Bob, and Bob, as an old school guy, wasn't going to get, which was really make her stand out. Those characters at Marvel were able to stand out. I never saw Storm as anything but, and this is no denigration, this is an aspiration. She was an essential X-Men. She wasn't an Avenger. I didn't need her to be a freaking Avenger. I liked her as an X-Men. She was a badass X-Men, and in a sense, her own person. Rambeau as Captain Marvel felt the same way. Despite that, I liked her Captain Marvel over Ms. Marvel a lot.
The difference I was
let me finish my point. Yeah, the point I'm saying is that you're right, we had nobody at DC. And that's what that was my directive, that was my goal, was to give us someone like that of color at DC. Because we didn't. The only person we had, and God bless her, but she existed in the 60s, but she was not what I would call an exciting character, was Bumblebee. It was Bumblebee. But she was the only sister. She was the only character. And and it was kind of a benign power. It was no way to make her look as badass as, say, Wasp.
Right, she was a fake Wasp.
The way, again, is who is doing the book and what they bring to it. Again, what helped me with Vixen was I was determined to make her stand out.
Right.
So getting away from all the other political talk and stuff, it comes down to this: what sells comics? What's exciting? What gets the guys to go, I want to pick that book up? That was my directive with it. That's what we did.
In 1983, though, Bumblebee wasn't even, I don't know what book she was on in 1983. Not a regular series, certainly.
Titans. She was a Titan.
I know she was in Titans, but in 1983?
1983, she didn't exist, because Titans at that time was
right. So here it is. So it's 1983, as I said, Storm's over at Marvel, Vixen's over at DC. The interesting part is, there's a big thing in our community, the Black community, about hair, right? It's a major point of self-identification is hair, particularly for Black women. Storm was always, at the time, was depicted with straight hair, or she is a Black woman with straightened hair, It wasn't until much later that they started to do various forms of her hair. But at the time, Chris Claremont's X-Men in 1983, she had straightened hair. You decided to do this depiction of Vixen with more of an Africanized version of her hair, and it's kind of a statement. It's kind of a statement.
Of course.
And it separates the two characters. And they're both African superheroes, so to speak. But one's got this hair that's like sort of claiming her heritage, which I thought was an interesting move at that time period when you put it in context.
Well, you call it interesting. To me, it was logical. Yeah. And it was logical because, again, what I didn't want to do, we had a hard enough time that we're going to be introducing teenage characters. And we couldn't deny that we weren't influenced by X-Men or weren't. And by that time, Teen Titans had been revised. I have to watch my history in my head and get it right. So why Bumblebee wasn't mentioned? Because that version of Titans was killed. That version of the Titan was forgotten, happily forgotten. Marv and George were already percolating, or in fact, we wouldn't have gotten JLA in this direction if it weren't for Titans, George and Marv's Titans, or Marv and George's Titans. I don't care how you want to call it. It took both of them to make it. But the thing is that set the stage for, and if you notice, although those guys were called teen, and like X-Men were teens, nobody treated them as teens.
Right. I
would almost say we were playing with that word without even knowing it. Everybody were tweens and older. That was part of the fun. That was part of the appeal. And I think the people, and again, coming up from the fan area, that was where we liked about her, that they weren't so easily defined. But getting away from all that, again, back into what really worked in comics again was how to make her sell, how to make her, how to make this stand out so that somebody isn't sitting there going, oh, you just took Storm and put her in JLA. Well, one thing Storm did that we weren't going to do was, remember, Storm had that little moment in her history where she was pretending to be a goddess. And I remember with Jerry, I was like, I don't want to do that. You know, I like the real geopolitical storyline that she was the child of an educator. And we know that was happening.
You know why I stand, Paul. Keep going, Chuck. Keep going, Chuck. I like this part.
So, and I applaud Jerry. No, lean into that. Let's not go into this whole thing. However, let's also lean into that damn amulet. I didn't want the amulet to be, I mean, it was important. This is mythology. Let's bring that up. We don't talk enough about the bat, so I wanted that ability with her. I didn't want her to turn into wannabes. I loved wannabes as a child, but I was very aware. I didn't want them to be, you know, size of an elephant, that kind of shit, and be saying elephant. I wanted her to say who she was and have that. I mean, that was one of the things I was trying to solve, was how to get this across so it felt fresh. That was real important. Because if you make it sound fresh, if you make it sound genuine, that's what's going to make this character last long. That's what's going to make this character fans step up and defend her and be with her, instead of her winding being, you know, I love that nobody ever did that, in my mind, compared her to Storm, because she was not Storm. This was not Storm. This is not a thief. This is not some, you know, bless his little heart, Chris Claremont pseudo rape victim archetype. No, she was, to my mind, always meant to be I don't want to say an avenger, but a vengeful character, because of what happened to her. She was justice. She was straight on mythical justice for her people. And I wanted to, again, lean into that. But the other thing that I did have a problem with, personally, the fashion model shit. But later I found out, I mean, it's funny, this stuff stays in your mind and I find the key on how to work it. But at the time I was having a rough time, because I really loved the idea that she was this child of this educator, and she survived, and her uncle, you know, slaughtered everybody, and this is on the back of her mind. Even I didn't mind she was a model, as long as we knew that it was a means for her to get her objective done.
Right.
And I tried to get this across to Jerry, but Jerry took the surface and missed the inside. So we had all the pseudo-sexual stuff, we had the clothing and all that. But I'm like, no, she uses that to, you know, I mean, we didn't finally get to where she was hunting her uncle down. I like that part. But by that time, I was making my way off the book, because I was disappointed in how everything came out. But initially, again, going back to this, that was her goal. Long story short, we wanted her to stand out for her. I thought this was and you said it earlier, it was an underachieved character, underrealized character. I wanted to make sure we realized it.
Yeah.
I see all the guys now who draw her, and they took the hair off. They don't like the hair. Some guys make fun of it. Whatever. The thing is, what I did give you still stayed.
Right.
And that's the part that I'm happy about. She's a vengeful warrior class woman.
You redefine the character.
I redefined the character, and it stays there.
In a way that it stays.
About the hair. If you want to make it short, Halle Berry, knock yourself out. You want to make it long with the beads, knock yourself out. Long as she's still kicking ass and she's using the bantu. That's important.
I will be remiss if I didn't point out again this pencil page by Brother Patton, and just how dope that is. I think a lot of times too, I'm not going to spend any time on this, say this real quick. I think that different pencilers, artists look different depending upon the inkers. It could definitely take things to a totally different direction.
Yeah.
But if you look at Brother Patton's pencils, they're really dope. I'm not his agent. I'm not any of that yet. But I would say y'all need to really go ahead and get a commission from the brother, man. I mean, this is top-notch work. It's incredible. I'm sorry, man. Let's go on, Brother Paul.
Bless you, dude. No, that's funny with this page, because again, what I also wanted to lean into, I didn't want her to be unapologetic about how sensual she was either.
Right.
You know, that was the part I was struggling with. Is I want her to be an exciting character.
Right.
You know, I want her to be not only badass, but no different than how I look at Black Canary. I see her the same way. You know, it's like, okay,
right.
I want that here. That's what we do in comics. We play with archetypes. We do use sexuality to sell. but
It's a
you also
masterclass.
anyway.
So another series you had the opportunity to help define was Challengers of the Unknown.
Yeah,
I thought this is kind of an interesting thing to bring up because a few days ago, Phil and I had opportunity to talk to the gentlemen that are working on Bitter Brute, Sanford Green and Chuck Brown and David Walker, and in their new series, Next Movement, they gave their characters uniforms, and they gave the book an aesthetic, and I asked, what was the basis of the aesthetic, and the first thing they kind of said was Challengers of the Unknown. So this book was an influence on what they're doing in the next Bitter Root.
I'm amazed. I'm surprised. Again, knowing you can tell I'm a student of the game too. So not only do I know, I gotta know the history of the people I'm drawing. Challengers in the uniform has been Challengers in the uniform since day one.
Yeah.
I read them back in the days. I mean, my first memory is, and that was like one of the last ones he was drawing. That was a Kirby book. Kirby drew this, him and Wally Wood at the beginning. And then the guy I grew up reading a ton of Challengers was Bob Brown. And Brown made the costume more superhero-y, but I still love the idea of these guys who weren't superheroes wearing their costume.
Right.
And so I just maintained the and I like the purple jumpsuits. They always crack me up. We used to call them the purple pajamas, because the way Kirby drew them, they did look like giant pajamas. I think he was looking at soldiers' dungarees, but thing was I loved them, and I wanted to. What we're looking at is actually a failure. In other words, it didn't catch on. DC kind of dropped the ball on it. And then someone came in with another concept, and they went with that concept over mine. But again, when I was doing this, I was heavily influenced by both Wally, by Jack, by Bob Brown, the previous guys in front of me. But I wanted to bring it more into the 80s. So, I remember going for the whole, this was before everybody was being aware of the whole Liefeld pocket thing or the Jim Lee pocket thing.
Right.
Again, I'm telling you my psychology when I draw these things. This stuff has to mean something. It can't just be some pretty shit. I'm from the old school that the utility belt really does have the shit in it.
Right. It really does have a batarang in there.
Yeah, I mean, Max didn't do this for fashion. This is shit. This is tools. And I wanted the Challengers, who are these normal guys who go out there and do crazy shit, because that's their name, Challengers the Unknown. I wanted them to have a version of something. If they're in a corner, how do they get out? If they can't rely on just themselves, they need something that was going to augment them. So I wanted them to have, I saw them, again, my influence to these guys, too, were the Thunderbirds, the British Thunderbirds.
Exactly.
Right.
Fuck. Oh, those guys. Oh, dude, I'm cursing. Can I curse on the show?
You already did it. We're good.
All right, because I'm going to let loose. No, those motherfuckers were my guys.
Thunderbirds are GOAT.
Oh, shit, man. My brothers and I would go nuts on that show. One thing I loved about it was that you can tell whoever made this show, they knew one thing kids loved. If you're going to blow shit up, you better sell it.
Right.
To this day, I look at this and go, those are real ass explosions they're blowing this stuff up. And it got you. There's no
CGI.
There's no CGI. That's the impact again. That's the power of impact, or as Paris said, power. I miss that guy. But that was the thing again that I wanted to bring back to the Challengers, because everybody got into this other stuff. Even the guy who was helping me design, who wrote this, missed the point I was trying to get across, which was take it back to when Jack and Wally made these guys go through shit. It was like X-Files. But it was X-Files with muscles. X-Files with steroids. They're really fighting Godzilla. Show them how they do it. Challengers, back when I was reading them, they had the Challenger Mountain where they had just about every damn vehicle thing known to man. Nobody asked how they built them or whatever. I didn't care. I just love that these guys were like Ghostbusters. That's what I wanted. Super steroid Ghostbusters. So I had augmented their costume. They went back to the jammies. They've got the purples again, but I gave them the vests because by this time paramilitary guys look cool. We're wearing these vests. and padded stuff. So that's what I wanted. Every pocket did have something in it. And then you can see some of my notes. One might have a gun, maybe a repel gun, whatever, you know. The only guy who was not going to have that was going to be Rocky, because we know Rocky just deals with his hands. So that was the psychology behind that. And then when I got the script, missed all of that. And that didn't come through. So it's a personal failure of mine, because I really wanted that series. And I saw where I wanted to go with this. Again, the idea of them taking on Godzilla just drove me nuts. Because DC has their versions of that anyway. So I thought, okay, you know, but nah, we didn't get that far.
So in terms of storytelling and character development, another character that you really helped define more than what sort of his original iterations was in Cyborg. There's a few issues that are sort of definitive in your runs in helping to define this character. You want to talk about this a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I remember when Marv asked me to do this. This was, I got this series as a, how would you say it? Not an apology, but it was a graduation present from JLA. I won't go into details other than that. I was disappointed in JLA and left. I didn't like how the characters were being done. I was even disappointed in how I was drawing. I didn't like it all. And Marv saw that. And Marv also, he was one of the first people I met when I got the assignment for JLA anyway.
Marv Wolfman.
So George, by this time, was starting to make noise about, you know, he was working towards writing himself. And that's where Wonder Woman and all that came up. But we didn't know that at the time. We were still associated with Titans. But George drew so much, he needed a break. So Marv had this arc he wanted to explore with Cyborg. And he goes, and I remember him going, I don't want you to take this personally. Like, you're the black artist, and I'm giving this as a black artist. The black artist. And I'm like, okay. All right. Well, you know, that's what I loved about Marv. You know, Uncle Marv was straightforward, you know. Yeah, I'm going to give it to you because you're black, because I know, well, you're black, and you're going to do this right. So, but as I always loved about how he wrote Cyborg and how George interpreted him, he wasn't just black, he was a person.
Right.
Back to that thing again. If he was just some cliche, I would not enjoy working on him. I would have fought and been antsy, which was some of the reason I got off JLA. I wasn't happy how Vibe was handled. I wasn't happy on how Vixen was handled, and I didn't have any influence. And here was Marv actually talking to me about this plot. And it was about Cyborg fighting so hard to get back to his humanity. I love that.
This is an important story in Cyborg's history. I think Cyborg is one of DC's best characters. It was what makes it important. You know, one of the criticisms I remember reading about Cyborg as a character was, as a black character, a black male character, and a large portion of your body is metal. It's a machine. The criticism is that it sort of lessens him as a person. Like he loses humanity. It distances him as being viewed as a black man because he's mostly machine. And even with things like his romance with Sarah, her name's Sarah, right? Sarah.
Well, he never really had a romance with Sarah. Are you talking about the blonde?
Well, there's like two. It's weird. DC is always mixing things up. There's like two Sarahs technically with the same name. One was black and one was white. It's a whole.
Yeah, that's a crisis thing.
Yeah, it's a whole crisis. It's messy. It's messy. Cyborg DC is messy.
Yeah.
But you know that gives its own barriers. But in this one, he is able to reclaim his humanity and appear human. So he still has his powers and stuff, but he's able to look human.
Well, actually, his powers are love. Again, that's the beauty of the story, is that he is. It's almost like he's been given a prosthesis where he can hide. It's a prosthesis now and not a superpower limb.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
so he doesn't have his powers once he's been depowered.
Right.
Because if he had his powers, that would make the fight seems a little easier. Be more power in it. That patent power. But that was important that we didn't do that, because he's trying. One of the things that, because I go back and look at this often. I mean, this is a very significant book for me, not only because of Marv, bless his heart, putting me on it, because it brought back my confidence when I lost it on JLA. And then he gives me Titans, which is like, dude, you just gave me the biggest book we got, and I got 3 of them, and he trusted me and guided me through it, and I love the story. You hit it on the head. It wasn't just this thing about I'm a black man. He just wants to be human. He just wants to fit in.
Right.
Almost like, you know what, I'm going to do that, and then I'll see what happens after that. And unfortunately, he never gets that far, because unfortunately, despite all that, he's still cybernetic. Whatever has happened to him has screwed it up. And we knew that if this was a problem that, in my mind, George gets to explore this later, but I'm setting it up for him. That's why I was happy about doing it.
Not just George, but David Walker had his run on Cyborg.
But that's later. I'm talking about my time.
Yeah.
It's 20-something years later. I'm talking about this time here.
I know, but what he did in his run was influenced by what you did in this issue.
That's fine. I'm just telling you where we were, because on one hand, too, I was cut out later. So, yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to. I mean, I got to set this up, and then I was given the impression, hey, you may be the one carrying the ball from here, because George now is kind of getting to where I'm going to move off from Titans. So my mind's starting to percolate like, oh, shit, now we can really explore stuff. And unfortunately, long story short, it goes to Ed Barretto. That's my point. That's just the professional part. Now, what David and those guys do, that's fine. That's all in spirit, right? And they got to fix it, and good for them. I'm just saying this is the setup. This is what happened, and which is sad, because I still feel an affinity to that character. I'm glad I've seen all the versions, and I'm happy what everybody's done. It's interesting to me. I have not seen. I'd be interested to see what Dave does with the character, because they haven't addressed his being a black man with this kind of thing. That's the advantage of now youth. You guys get to do that, but at the time, this is what we're doing. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Can I want to interject. So I'll say this: the one thing I hate, that, no disrespect to what Paul was saying, I hate that these black, these black writers, but these super sophisticated, the black thespians, when it comes to comic book history and art, will say things like, well, it's not fair that as a black man he has to have the armor, the metal, the cybernetics, or whatever, because it takes away. It doesn't take away from it. Here's the thing: our black heroes and our black villains should be on equal playing field as having the same problems and issues as the white characters. Mm-hmm. What makes Cyborg exciting is that he is still a black man in spite of the cybernetics. And I hate when these, and I'm gonna say, I don't care, because I can say it. I hate when these wannabe dudes want to get all deep. Yeah, man, they just going, we can't even see the black man. Shut up. I don't want to hear that shit, man. Stop that. Like, this is what makes Cyborg. We should be able to tell our stories without the restrictions, without the limits. Every time I hear these suckers come up with all this extra stuff, well, I'm tired they put them in these studios. Shut up. No, superheroes wear masks so you don't know who they are, so the families don't get hurt, et cetera, et cetera. It's not hiding the fact that they're whatever. All the situations where they may do that when we're selling, I'm not getting into that particular point, but I'm talking about in the mythos of superheroes. When I look at Cyborg, I know this is a brother. It doesn't make any sense. And I also think it makes it an even more interesting story, because now you can delve into these struggles of him being, just wanting to be human. Then, of course, once he's human, it goes back to him being black. Like, there's so many different layers you can go with this. It's just,
that's a powerful story
that tells itself.
That's a powerful story, but it's one of the oldest stories of science fiction. What makes the man? When does the man take over? When the machine takes over?
Come on, man.
Who's this? Hey, we dealing with that now with AI. So it's like, that's one of the other things I loved about him is that he is not a ghetto kid. He's from a more than upper middle class scientific family. And, this was something else that wasn't explored that I liked about him, or it was being explored that I liked about him. And again, Cyborg, I'm just, for me, and we can talk about other people, but I'm just saying for me, what I enjoyed about it was I got to be in the room and got to play with this and got to explore a character that I admired and not seeing him being treated with cliche.
Cyborg reminded me of one of my favorite television shows when I was a kid, The $6 Million Man.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's like and me being a kid, I used to always visualize I was Steve Austin, right?
Come on, man.
Running
slow motion fast.
What is slow motion fast? And like Cyborg was Steve Austin, but he looks like me.
Fact.
I used to drive my buddies crazy because they did back in the day. The $6 Million Man was introduced as a what they call movie of the week first, and then they ran into a series. I love the movie of the week because they dealt with all the shit he would deal with, which was him worried about the parts rejecting him.
Right.
Him, what part is me and which is this, and how to make it work. And by the end of the show, he still wasn't sure he was cool with this. And I wish they kept that in the series because
but that part you mentioned was actually based on the original book material for the television series called Cyborg.
Yeah, by Mike.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I've read all this stuff. Remember, I'm old school in this shit, man.
I read that book too as a kid, man. I thought it was dope.
I drove my friends crazy about it because I was still, to this day, I watched it a couple of years ago. A lot of this stuff is on YouTube. And it still holds up. And it's like, wow. The show, I have no regrets that the show is where it is. That has turned out a generation of fans, young and old, and has maintained. And they're still arguing about who they're going to get to do the movie. I don't care. We got the show. That's all that matters. But I always tend to go to the original process and see what they were trying to do. Kochak's another one. When you watch the original Night Stalker movie and go, this was so nuts, and you see the show and goes, why did they get caught in that movie Monster of the Week thing? They missed all this fun stuff. Right. It doesn't matter. It's now in history. Let's move on. But anyway, that's my thing. Anyway.
Another character you're credited with creating is Vibe.
Oh yeah.
One of DC Comics' first Latino superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly one of their most prominent ones. At the time. And the interesting thing about Vibe, not only did you get to do him in the JLA series, but he actually had some legs. Like he ended off spinning off into cartoons and then eventually in the CW on the Flash series.
Right.
What is your thoughts on how that character the character that you helped create has been able to keep going the way
honestly, it's luck. Honestly, that as I found out later, what has always helped is when the audience for it sees themselves and they keep it alive. Long past when the creators either dropped the ball or forgotten it or don't care and moved on. The thing we were talking about with Cyborg was that I had to stop you on that because it doesn't matter it doesn't, not so much it doesn't matter. The new guy's going to come and carry the ball and move on. I'm talking about when it first started. And that's interesting to me because how he evolves from there, that becomes the history. And the thing with Survive was that I was more than happy to let him die. I had a character for a long time until I met fans of Vibe who I didn't pay attention to at the beginning because there was no way of finding out. And then I was told by so many young Latinos how much it really touched them. This guy spoke to them.
Right.
Up to this point, I thought I was part of a bad joke that I felt like I dropped the ball on. And now I'm hearing from them going, no, man, you were speaking for me. And I was rooting. You thought we were laughing. We were rooting for you. And that changed my entire attitude on this Vibe. And then, honestly, CW brought it home. They really developed the character and they really developed him beyond where Jerry and I started with him. And I love that guy. I love that he was this nerd. I love that he can walk those, you know, he was both scientific, he was also a nerd. He was both innocent, but he was also kind of savvy. And then when he gets the powers, okay. Because when we were doing it, it was just about powers. And it was like, I want to get character stuff in there. And then we just, you know, we were in 2 different boats. By that time, our houses had divided. So we weren't getting the vibe that I was looking for until I did the animated version. And that was because the director I was working with on Batman Brave and the Bold was a serious Vibe fan. Again, he was blowing me away about how this character influenced him. He's not Latino. He's Canadian. And, but he was telling me how he was into breakdancing. And he was like, we gotta do this. And I went, okay, I'll do this with you. If we do one thing that we didn't do well on JLA was we have fun with this. And we talked it out and we made this thing, which was like, I wanted this vibe animated on the left to reflect 80s animation. So in other words, this is going to be a male version of Gem and the Gemstones. So we're going to throw breakdancing in. Because that was the other thing in drawing Vibe, and he's a breakdancer, it was really hard to get that across. You know, that failed. I felt that was a fail on my part. But in animation, oh shit, no, I got some. We got rotoscope action to put on them and everything, and it worked. And the joke was there, and we weren't laughing at him this time. We were laughing with him.
Oh, so for people to be completely under, you are the creator of Vibe, correct?
Yeah.
So
came from nowhere.
now let's go to this. As you can see right here, if you need to know in what issue Vibe first appeared in, it's in Justice League Annual #2. Yeah. And you have them right there. Brother Patton created Vibe. Y'all can go to eBay, go to your local LCS and grab that. Black created by none other than Brother Chuck Patton. And like he said, you know, unfortunately, they didn't have the internet back then, so he didn't know the impact that it was having on the readers and things of that nature. But it's a character that has lasted and has done so much. And there's a cartoon with him being a b-boy and breaking, like it's crazy. So Justice League of America Annual #2, the first appearance of Vibe, created by none other than Brother Patton, that we have on the show right now.
We had fun with that. I mean, again, to get the history right, it was both Jerry and I. Jerry came to me and said, I want to do, he loved Electric Boogaloo, that movie.
I hated Electric Boogaloo.
I hated it too.
I'm a B Street guy.
To the Electric
I'm a B Street guy. I ain't like Electric Boogaloo. That's it.
I don't blame you, man. Here's what helped me though. I was aware of Capoeira, which wasn't known because again, martial arts. I love Capoeira, and I was talking to him about, well, maybe we can incorporate that. You know, because I didn't want him to just be a benign superhero. I wanted him to have that impact. You know, I wanted him to have some hands on somebody. So I was trying to figure out how can we take that. And then when I saw the movie, I hate the movie, but I was sitting there going, but I couldn't deny the impact on the kids around me because I was living in LA at the time, which was kind of ironic because when we said in Detroit, I was like, well, there ain't a lot of Latino kids in Detroit, but I'm in LA. There's a lot of them here. We should have said it in LA, but that's another story. But the thing about it that I was trying to get across was to make it energetic, make him, I wanted him to move. And he wasn't just going to point a finger and blast. He has to move to generate the power. So that kind of got me back on board with it. But Jerry really wanted to make him breakdancer. So it was 50-50. You know?
Nice.
But I take responsibility for it. So we both do.
So another character that you had sort of definitive moments on was Vigilante, who's been popularized recently this past couple years on the Peacemaker television show. A lot of people had no idea who Vigilante was until that television show.
I love that show.
And his comic just blew up afterwards.
Yeah. I wish this is another one where, like with Vibe, it's like the TV guys did what we missed. And long story short about Vigilante, because this is the second Vigilante, by the way, that book. That guy is the second guy to wear the costume.
Yeah, not Adrian Chase, the other guy.
Yeah, I was brought in on, again, Uncle Marv, Marv was like, I want to do Because by that time Keith was leaving the book. Keith Pollard, and again, I had not talked to him since then, but I always admired Keith. He was one of my favorite artists, as well as a hell of an individual, a human being. And Keith had left Vigilante, and so he was really in the middle of who to get. And I think they had made the decision to put Ross Andru on it, but Ross needed time to catch up. And it's at a crucial part in the book where, after 6 issues, now Marv's going to do the origin, but Keith's leaving. So Marv looked at me and when you did great with Cyborg, so I'm giving you Vigilante to do. So I got to do 2-part Vigilante origin, except as Marv's telling me the origin, I'm like, what the hell is this about? It's just so strange. He was never meant to be the Punisher, even though we all knew he was sort of, Punisher's opposite side. He was supposed to be a rival of the Punisher or DC's Punisher, but he's nothing like DC's Punisher.
Right.
So Marv went a different route, and I tried to help him flesh it out by going, okay, in my mind, I wanted him to be like an avatar of literally vigilantes. There have been many vigilantes over the centuries, and not just the guy in the cowboy guy with the bandana, although I wanted to kind of integrate that eventually. But that depended if I got the book. This is another one where if I drew it, Marv was like, I want to get you as a regular artist. Unfortunately, like I said, they already had chose Ross Andru, and Marv also was getting ready to get off the book himself.
Yeah.
That was a misunderstanding.
So here's just a general overview of other characters you were credited as being sort of definitive on.
Yeah.
Cadre, Gypsy being another one.
Yeah.
This is really DC just trying to add some more flavor to their comics. I'll just say it like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny about that. It's not why I take umbrage, because I remember the thinking at the time.
Yeah.
No one was thinking about, I mean, look, if colors sold, they were going to go for it. But I don't remember them actively doing that until Milestone, honestly. Because if you notice, there weren't a whole hell of a lot of heroes and black heroes and characters came up. I mean, Bronze Tiger was created. I liked him, but nobody really knew how to use him. And he didn't really become really a force, or at least a character of anybody paid attention to until Suicide Squad. They're
still not used properly.
Yeah, and then Black Lightning, who I liked, but Black Lightning lingered until Outsiders, and even then, it's like, so there wasn't a real mindset. It really came down creator to creator. One guy's going to come in and go, well, let's use this guy because nobody else is using it. Or, I mean, when I created Cadre, there was a concerted effort for me to bring in color. I didn't say it out loud, but I'd be damned if I was going to make everybody Caucasian.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to be a rival against the JLA. Everybody JLA went against were either very generic villains or guys already. The Legion of Doom, who was just everybody else who ever took on anybody 5th issue down. So I wanted JLA to have their own new villains, just like they have new heroes. And I was I was looking at X-Men. I was looking at what the X-Men were bringing in. And I knew that we need to make them varied. We need to make them bizarre. We need to make them, again, I use that word hands-on. I didn't want them to be benign. I wanted them to be people that you get to punch, and they punch back. So Cadre was that. The only problem was the Overmaster. Jerry was so vague about what he was that I wanted, again, my mandate was I didn't want him to be like, I want him to look as badass as, like, say, Galactus. But again, he puts hands on you like Thanos. But he was nowhere near anywhere power-wise as those guys. But I wanted him to visually be that way. It was most important for me that he be mysterious. Hence the gold face. In my mind, that was him. This body was a fake. Jerry never asked me, but that was my thinking. I wanted a point where, which I got to do later in animation, the same joke where once they defeat him, they think they got him, his head was going to get and walk away.
Well, let's talk. You said that this is a lesser known characters. Let's talk about a more well-known character.
Yeah.
Black Panther. My favorite superhero of all time.
Yeah.
This is a very slept on book. This is Daredevil 245.
Yeah.
For those who are not familiar with the storyline, there's this. It's a little nebulous if he's American or if he's Wakandan. His name is Wheeler, but he served in Wakanda's military,
Air Force,
the Air Force, where he's wearing this suit.
Their version of, like, let's say, if the special ops kind of thing.
Well, what's interesting, this suit, if you look at it, it's very similar to a suit you see later on in the Ta-Nehisi Coates run, the Midnight Angel suit, with the wings in the back and the armor. I just thought that was kind of interesting and cool. But long story short, he works in the Wakandan military. He was a hero. He was an action guy. Probably had a high kill count or whatever. Love the thrill of action.
You realize you're giving this more story than it actually had.
And I got you know what's interesting. It's funny you should say all that, because that his entire background is in one page.
Yeah,
you have one page where you talk about his entire history.
I know.
And what I just reiterated is what I gleaned from the storytelling that you did on one page.
Oh, thank you.
Because no, I'm being serious. Like, he talks about, well, later on in the book, he's like, well, you know, I'm a gambler, because he suffers from gambling addiction.
Right.
And he says, I've always been addicted to the rush. Whether it be I was as a soldier for Wakanda or rolling dice, I've always been addicted to the rush. And you tie that into the one page that you did of his background. You see him shooting people or whatever, and he's getting accolades and getting a medal, whatever it was. But you put so much in one page that I already know this guy's entire life off of one page. But this is a really slept on book. But one of the things that sort of made this book famous was this page right here. This is the very first page of the issue on the right, where you have him wearing this jacket. It says Wakandan Air Force. Can you talk about what the significance of this is?
Oh, well, it's very simple. Again, it was taking stuff. I call it taking it off the page. And what I usually tell that to my artists, that means the writer will imply something that they're not clear. So you got to put history into it. You gotta build it up. And her just saying, this is Ann Nocenti writing this, and I'll tell you right off the bat, this was not my favorite story. I can get into a whole reason why I got it. I would just say that I think I got it because I was black, but I can't prove that one. But because there's a lot of weird stuff at that time, but still, it wasn't like I got a really tight, concise story. I literally got this as a one paragraph description of half the book, which was one of the reasons I wasn't happy. The reason they got me on it, though, I was promised that I would have Al Williamson as an inker. So I was like, I would do anything. I will crawl across baby vomit and glass to work with Al Williamson. I admire that man's work so much. So
doesn't Tony does Zuniga work on this one?
Well, yes, he does, because I was not told he was going to take his, they didn't get it out, so they got Tony DeZuniga. This is one of the reasons why I'm seeing the comments, and I hate to bust the bubble. This was not my favorite. I did the best I could, but it was a struggle because I was told left and everything went right. I was told things in the script, this is going to happen. Like your description of the script, I got to be honest, that's your interpretation. That's not what was written. He was a down, out, straight on gambling addict. The implication, I had problems with, okay, he's an addict, but he's this war hero and all this stuff. But this was the writer, and she was the one calling the shots, but she wasn't writing it out. She was just kind of hoping I would flesh it out. So I did. But I was also worried about, but what about this part? Not my job. I remember hearing the echoes of DC's editor telling me, well, you're not the writer. So all I can do is do my job, which was, all right, then I'm going to put this in. I'm going to put this in. So that jacket was inspired by my brother, one of my older brothers who was in NAM. And that was the first time I seen one of his NAM jackets. He was not in the Air Force. He was Marine. And when he got out on his second tour and came home, as a souvenir, they bought these jackets telling them where they were. And then you can go on eBay and see these things. They would say that map on the back would be Vietnam. And it would usually say where you were, just like that. It would tell you where you were based. And so I was inspired by him. In fact, my brother, to my mind, was the backstory of that character. Yeah. Coming home, going through what he was going through to try to fit in. And that's how I related to the story, because it wasn't really written that well in the script. And I hate to knock it, but that's just the reality. We're lucky because if we do our job, then you're going to see the good stuff. But,
right.
You know, if I wasn't me and I would just go, oh, it was a wonderful story, then I wouldn't be me. So, and I already told Phil, I have no fucks left to give. So, I'm going to tell you how it was. It both, I'm gratified that it has its fans. Cracks me up that jacket got more press than the actual.
It did. It caused a bit of an internet store because someone had designed jackets for sale. They were selling it on the internet.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please. I wanted to get your story on it.
The thing, I was told by one of, I think it's one of your friends, Otis.
Yeah. Otis Art.
Otis hit me up and told me this was happening.
Yeah.
And he wasn't sure I was involved or not. And by that time, because I haven't seen this book in years, and I went, well, let me check this out. I'm kind of flattered, but I'm also like, well, we'll see what they're doing, because I have not known, as we learn sometimes, we're so close in the business, we don't know what's going on outside. I have so many friends whose work has been grabbed and made into apparel that they have seen no sense, no money, let alone no credit for it.
Right.
These people have made, and I've met people who work in that business who have told me that's what they do. So I was kind of not flattered, but kind of excited, like, oh, somebody ripped me off and did this. Let's see what they did. And then when I saw it, I was like, oh, dude, that's a direct rip off. Now, come on. And he was he was in one of the face groups, one of the groups bragging about it. And I just pointed out to him, because I've been at this business a while, and I have had lawyers and had to deal with shit like this, and had to remind them, look, if it's not me you need to worry about, you need to worry about Disney. Because if Disney decide in the next Black Panther movie, they're going to make these into the jackets for the, I forgot the name of the young ladies, the guards.
Dora Milaje.
Right. Which was funny, because when I created that costume, those guys didn't exist. So I don't even know how I came with that costume. I know I wasn't happy with the armor thing. Anyway, I'm diverting. But the thing is, I was trying to tell the dude was, look, dude, I'm giving you a heads up. Disney is sue crazy. They will sue your ass off. They'll kill you and sue your corpse. That's how busy they are. That's how much they protect their IP. So I'm just giving you a heads up. At least identify what you've done. At least identify this is the comic book you took it from. I'm the artist that drew it. This is now a Disney property. And by that time, I think Black Panther, the movie, wasn't out yet. Tell me if I'm right.
Right.
So again, it was like, dude, I'm giving you a heads up. As soon as that movie comes out and Disney decides they want to do Black Panther merch, they're going to look around and see who's ripping them off. And then the guy got a little uppity about it, and I had to go, all right, go with God. Good luck with you.
So I remember, Chuck Patton, one of our very first conversations, you may not remember this. So, and shout out that the commission piece, I believe you did that for Otis. I believe that is Otis's commission piece right there. Shout out to my man Otis, the illest Black Panther collector on the planet.
Otis is awesome.
He's a monster, man.
No lies detected.
I didn't know he was that crazy about it. Then I saw his stuff. When he did that throne, I was like, oh, this man.
Yes, the throne is epic. But I remember I hit you up because I think our first conversation, I was asking if you still had that original page.
Right. I know.
And so that was the conversation that we had. Yeah. And then we talked about the jacket. And then I had a whole nother incident about the conversation with the jacket, but we're not gonna get into that right now.
Yeah.
We'll let that slide. That was crazy. But I just want to say, like, that is another iconic piece. And back again, people, it's Daredevil number 245. It's 9.8. Go online, grab this particular book. You need to have one. The CBC instead of usually I got all CGC, but this grab that joint. You need to have it in your collection. And what's, one of the things that's important about this is that it's dope because when you get to hear the creators talk about what really went into it, right? And I think a lot of times artists and creators that sometimes we can be so hard on our particular work, but sometimes when you're creating something, you don't know how it touches somebody else, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want people to think that Brother Patton is dismissing everybody's love for this story or this for whatever, but it's just there are certain things that we may do that we like more than others.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometimes, some of us consumers will get something out of it that may not necessarily be what was put into it, but that's also a beautiful thing as well, because sometimes you don't know how you affect other people in the work that you do. And this is such a very pivotal, that jacket is crazy, and for it to have that effect decades later is when it just, you never know when something is going to hit. Daredevil number 245 is not a very expensive book, but it's a very important book.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs to jump on. Everybody needs to have one.
It was a tough one too, because I love Daredevil, I love Black Panther, and there are parts in here where I thought, again, you're right, man. I guess what I'm saying, when I give that impression, that's my behind the scenes.
For sure.
On the surface, I am proud of being asked to do it. I'm glad it's there. I wish it opened other doors. It actually did make me a little cagey, because it did open doors, but it still kind of went wacky. And it led me to, in the long run, decide, you know what, let's try something else. Let's go into animation. Let's see what happens. And I'm grateful for that. So it's like, if I got to be the definitive artist on Daredevil and done 20 damn issues, that's another thing. That'll be that's another world. That's a parallel universe. In this universe, it was one of the things that said, hey, man, it's time for you to find something else to do. It's time for you to stretch your muscles. What's this whole thing about storytelling? So that's what I look at that, and I see the beginning of that. I also look at it, and I look at, you said something earlier, maybe it was off stage, about the emotions. It was really important for me to show this man being wounded. It was really important for me. Again, I told this to my brother, not recently, but when everybody started talking about it in the jacket, and he was reminding me, I asked him where was that jacket, and he had sold it years ago. And he was also aware that people want that jacket, the authentic Vietnam jacket. And I said, I drew that in a Black Panther book in honor of you. Because his life is a lot better now. But he was like one of many vets come back wounded, PTSD and everything. He saw a lot of hard combat. And I wanted this story, as it was told to me by the editor, to reflect that. And I thought, what the execution of it, we did the best we could. No offense against Tony DeZuniga, but Tony was known for not following what you draw and draw what he felt like. And he did that to Buscema. I should have been flattered. Hey, if he can butcher Buscema, I should be happy he can butcher me. And these years later, I can laugh about it and say that. But I'm just grateful that you guys got something out of it. That means I did my job.
So for years I've had a couple of these issues from this Justice League run on the left, and I did not know that it was part of an interconnecting cover in this manner until recently.
Yeah,
so embarrassed to find this out. I got to track down these other two issues so I can complete this image that you recreated to the right. Can you tell us about this?
When you put them together, it forms a map that takes you to a great treasure. That's a lie. I've been wanting to say that for the longest. One of the things about it, again, this was a Len Wein idea. He whipped it on me, and I was like, Again, what people don't realize, this is my first year in comics.
Nice.
I'm not some jaded professional who knew how to do this. All this shit was literally childhood's end. He would say, we're going to put 4 covers together, and this is how you say 4 covers together that can split out, and then we're going to put it as a poster. We're going to make so much money on this. And I'm hearing, you can do that? How am I going to do that? What about the split? It doesn't exactly line up. I had the aesthetic of the artist had to step aside for the merchandise guy to come over and go, no, this is how we're going to do it. And I took we did it. I just sold that piece. Actually, I sold the original piece 2 years ago, and
Nice.
we thought it was lost. And apparently, Dick, because Dick was the inker, Dick had it in his estate, sent it to me, which bless their hearts. It was the last piece. I didn't want to sell it, but I had no choice. But it was I always loved anything Dick inked of mine. He was and still always my favorite inker. And but I was really blown away by what he did on this, because Dick made you look like the way you imagine you look, the way you want to look. And to this day, I tell a lot of people who try to ink me, if you're not doing what he did, you're not interested in me. you're not getting me. And him doing that, and we did it as one big piece. And then they cut it up and you got what you got. The tough part about this, the hardest part about this, I had no idea what the freaking story was. That was the other thing that blew me away. I'm in Lynn's office. We have long lunches. He told me how the story's going, because Jerry was, I was still in New York at that time. And Jerry would send stuff, and then we would decipher it, and then I have to ask questions. It was just that crazy. But I knew, like, wait a minute, I got these villains. What do they do? Well, you come up with the villains. No, what do they do? Where are they fighting? To this day, don't try to figure out the background. It makes no sense. The finished story, they're inside of an alien spaceship. Jerry didn't know that. I would love to have known that when I designed this thing. That's another behind the scenes.
Crazy.
So that's, so there's the original, and like I said, you can probably find this the thing on eBay, because a lot of people don't realize DC did try to sell this. This was the first. They did 3 books like this. Yeah. I think another one was Arion.
You talking about the poster for it?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. They did. This was a format Lynn was trying to, this is a trick. Marvel wasn't doing it, so we're going to try it. So 3 books were chosen to go this. Justice League, I think Arion, and some other book. Yeah. And then we did it that way. And then the big mandate was, all right, when that sells, then we're going to put it as a poster and sell it separately. And I don't think I even got a free poster. That's how cheap the bastard. So I mean, it took me years. I actually got mine off eBay. And it's affordable. So that's the story of that one.
So just to close out your comic books. History here that we're going through. Most recently, your work is going to be featured in the Epiphany Engine book coming out.
Yeah, that was a very important, as important as this is to me. In fact, I'm gonna thank you, Paul, for having me on, because I've watched you guys, and it's nice and glorified. It's gratifying to be amongst my peoples. It's nice to be recognized. So that was cool. Getting on the Epiphany was the same thing. The word was out that Tony Cattell wanted to do this great honor of all these indie Black creators coming together to do their version of, like, without calling it that, but it's basically a version of Crisis, without it being Crisis. But the same implications, all worlds collide, and all these different heroes are going to interact. And they were talking to people, and Tony had been trying to get me to do stuff for his own line of characters. The reason I didn't is because I've gone away from superheroes, and a lot of these guys just all seem the same to me. So I needed something unique. And when I heard this part, that was unique. And I also love the idea of everybody coming out and putting their characters together and supporting each other. I like that. So I went back to Tony and went, look, dude, if you need me for this, I want to be in. And that's when oh yeah, you're going in. The only problem was, just like that JLA cover, they didn't give me enough of a story to work on. So all I knew was that, okay, you got this family like the Fantastic Four, and the one young one is like the key person, and there's this villain who I found out later is his older self, and all these worlds. That was so vague. And I have not drawn a cover like this in over 30-something years. So,
I will try and skip over the fact that you just dropped a major spoiler, but that's all right. That's all right.
Oh, did I say? Oh shit! Oh,
oh wow.
You know what I said? That's his mother. Oops, that's not his mother either.
Oh wow! And Tony Cottrell's in the chat too. Tony, I'm sorry, dog. I'm sorry.
It's gonna sell more books, baby. It's gonna sell more books.
Exactly. Just ignore me, man. You don't even talk to me anymore anyway. So,
Oh no, we got more time because we got to talk about the animation too.
All right, so let's jump to the animation. Phil's been chomping at the bit to talk about your animation history.
All right. Oh, guy went right to Double Dragon.
Well, you know, before we go into that, you know, I just
need some likes up. That before we go into that, I need everyone to hit the like button, share this video, and if you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed to Black Comic Lords, please subscribe to the channel. But let's get those likes up.
They'll bring me back.
No. Listen, we just now scratching the surface. So the thing that I want to talk about, is that the fact that you have such an extensive animation resume, and you know that is one of the things that is always hold in just high regards when it comes to you. You know, not just the comic book art, because the comic book art is ill within itself, but the fact that you were able to make this transition from the comic art into the animation world, and it was like and you worked on just so many different projects, and we're gonna keep it 100.
I just remember I didn't even tell you.
Listen, listen, and I'm gonna say this too. You know, it's funny because in doing this, I knew about Emmy winning Spawn and all those, but you know, it's just there were some that, you know, I just didn't know, and I almost was embarrassed that I didn't know that you worked on this, because you know, I looked at I'm like a fake Patton encyclopedia over here. You know what I mean?
You are.
If there's, can you kind of talk about, and we just got like a regular conversation, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so many. There's just so many. Like literally, I'll tell you today. I was in class today, and you can back this up. I'm in class today, and one of my students at ACH talked about Teen Titans cartoon, right? And when he talked about the Teen Titans cartoon, he said somebody he got some Teen Titans something, or he drew some Teen Titans something, or whatever the case. I don't know what the hell that is. Flying on nobody shit to bite me. So I said, I said, he said, man, I said, well, I know the guy who did the cartoon, who worked on the cartoon. He said, no, you don't. I said, yeah. He said, man, if you do, man, he said, man, yeah, if you do, man, I want to give him to sign something. I called Chuck on the phone. I put it on speaker in the middle class. That was today. I said, yo, Chuck, he was like, what's I said, man, didn't you work on Teen Titans? He was like, yeah. They was like, oh, that's crazy. I said, man, I got a kid, man, I want you to sign. I would love to do something. I was like, I'll holler at you later. They were all like, oh, that's crazy. So that's just a personal story. And I appreciate that. But can you give us just, and we're just gonna go with it. Just give us your switch from comics to animation, and we'll just kind of flow and go into that. Because when people, the sheer number of pieces you worked on is crazy.
It blows me away sometimes.
One more thing before we go. If you look behind Chuck, you'll see an Emmy.
Oh, that thing.
You see that John sitting in that glass case? That shit ain't fake. That's real, man. But we don't get it.
That ain't fake. That's harder. That's harder. How did I get? Simply put, when I was done with comics, and I was like, I felt comics was done with me. I still love comics, obviously, since I picked on Tony and did his covers. But I got to this place. There's a real world feeling of you got to make a living. I didn't have a family. I still don't. I mean, I'm on my own out here, but still, you got to eat. You got to survive. And I felt like I'm never going to get that space in my heart of becoming the superstar in comics. People were dying to get my commission. I wasn't even doing commissions then. So I got into my head, I need to make a living. But I'm lucky enough that I can make a living now as an artist, as opposed to, I got to go work in the Ford or Chrysler plant. I'm living in LA. LA is movie world, television world. I got in animation. At that time, they were hiring a shitload of comic book artists, mostly the Filipino artists. You've seen do all these marvelous things from the DC horror books to creepy and eerie. A lot of guys who have been retired or at least on the verge of retirement from DC who weren't getting work from DC are now working in animation. And I fit right in. I came in from the bottom at the early version of Marvel Animation working on Defenders of the Earth. A show that
is that the joint with Flash Gordon?
Flash Gordon, yeah.
Gordon, Phantom, Man, and their children.
Come on, man. Come on.
I thought it was the most ludicrous because I knew all these characters. We all did, you know. And some were more fans than others. I just saw it ludicrous as hell. I looked at it as a lark. I laughed. I laughed when I got that first check. So this is honestly, it was all about money. And I got that check and went, holy shit, I'm making more in a month than, or at least more, yeah, well, in this case, you space every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, I'm getting more in that 2 weeks check than I did in a month of comics.
Come on, man.
So I went, okay.
Message.
I'm drawing chairs. Fine. You know, I mean, I used to blow them away because animation people got a little pickety, they got a little persnickety. They didn't think you can draw this stuff. And comic book guys, we got to. As I tell one director, dude, you know, I have to draw a scene. I show him one of my Titan pages, like, oh shit. Because yeah, building, characters running down the street, Cyborg throwing a chair, car, all that I got to draw. So, you know, you telling me to draw a table and a chair and a pencil, I can do that in 10 minutes. And still have lunchtime. We were lazy then. But, I mean, God, I feel old now. I'm looking at myself going, I remember being young. I had a darker beard and everything. But got in from the bottom, worked with all these wonderful people, amazing people. I mean, we're down the hall from, right across the hall from like Nestor Redondo. And they were treating these people like, you know, like they were nothing. But they were making a living. So that's what we put up with. And then I left, I finished that show and tried to go back in comics and realized, you know, I can't do that. I'm making more money in animation. And then a friend kept telling me, Rick Hobart, kept telling me, dude, you gotta do storyboards. You can make 3 times as much as you did being a prop guy, because that's what I was, prop guy, background guy. And you go, and you know how to do this. Come on, you're a storyteller. That's why I first heard the word storytelling. So I started doing boards. Boards were hard, they had a lot of work. Not as much as comics, you know. You just have to know and learn the language of film. And that's what I did more than some of the other guys did. Some of the other guys did too. I mean, you learn on the job. That was the beautiful part. Not so much now. So that's how I got in animation, and I went up. They took comic book guys and they started making comic book shows. So guess who's now more important? The comic book guys telling them how to make these comic book shows.
Right.
So
right. So I guess you know, the wizard behind the scenes is going to start doing. Slow down, Playboy. Go, yes, sir. So let's. Can we talk about that first one?
Which one?
Let's talk about Double Dragon.
Double Dragon.
Keep it 100. Keep it as real as possible.
No, Double Dragon was one of my. It was a learning tree experience.
Okay.
I got to be, by this point, I already started directing shows. And so this would have been my 3rd show.
Okay.
I think my first was Captain N. And then I took over that show, and boy, I learned a lot about that.
So you went from animator to director, correct?
Well, I went from animation, well, not animator, but let's say I was in production.
Production.
Production artist. And then I got put into a group called development, which meant I helped develop the show. So I got to learn what went into making a show from the bottom up, how to sell it, how to put it together. And then we shipped that off to the producers for production. And in production, we take half of what we put on it and then make the show. But that was a great education because now I know what it meant to make a show. Okay. And so I got given shows direct with nothing because they knew I can develop it on the fly. And then they sweetened it by making me a director because I was art directing it too. And so literally they started making us producers because that was more money. And also we got to call the shots and how it was being made and who's coming in and all that stuff. You really aren't a producer. Producers handle the money. but I was definitely the director. So Double Dragon was like my third show, I think. And Double Dragon had no money. It was based off, this is when they were grabbing all these wonderfully violent shows, all games, and deciding to make them shows.
Okay.
So we had to cut out all the things that made it violent and make a version of it that worked. I, of course, we're going to make them superheroes. I used in my mind, I never told the writers what I was doing because I didn't want them to get in there. Again, I'm the comic book guy. If I start listening to them, then what the hell am I doing this for? So as my mandate for Double Dragon, the artist knew I was doing it. I used Green Hornet. So the Green Hornet, the usual Batman, whatever, but I wanted, it was Asian. So, I mean, to me, Green Hornet always said Kato, honestly.
Right.
So I brought that element to it. There was a lot of things we stole directly from Green Hornet, like the way their car came out of their secret entrance. That was right from the Green Hornet. Right. The powers and all that, they were Bruce Lee. To me, they were the sons of Bruce Lee, so we did that. But the armor and stuff, that's not between Marvel Comics and DC Comics, mostly Marvel.
Okay.
So the magic swords, again, all that was just from comic book canon. I picked and choose so much and mixed it up, and then animation people were sitting there going, "Oh, that's original." It's like, "What it is?" Knock yourselves out. I did the same thing with Captain Planet, but you don't have them up, so we're not going to talk about it.
Well, no. No. Nice try.
Okay.
Let's talk about Captain Planet real quick.
Captain Planet.
Captain Planet is so many individuals' childhood.
Yeah.
I was a little bit older when Captain Planet was dropping. Let's talk, because Captain Planet is even the brunt of different jokes. You had Don Cheadle do a live action Captain Planet.
That was awesome.
So Captain Planet isn't just, it transcends generations to a certain degree in people. So
it's amazing it does. Yeah. Captain Planet was another one where it was owned. The idea of it the name came from, I got his face and I can't think of his name, billionaire guy, Ted Turner. Ted Turner's nickname for his girlfriend's gave him was Captain Planet. And so he got into his
Wait. Captain Planet is a play on Ted Turner almost, because just for the name?
That's who put the money behind on this, yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah. And he put it as his girlfriend in charge, his ex-girlfriend in charge, but by that time he had married Jane Fonda. So he had an ex-girlfriend who was like a female Indiana Jones. She was down in the South American jungles fighting with the native indigenous people against the developers and the people who were trying to burn out the Amazon. She was two-fisted crazy woman. Loved it. She was a lot of fun. But she also she was also one of these, I don't like male-dominant fantasies, so superhero stuff is stupid to me. And I'm like, yeah, but that's what we're creating. So I knew, okay, my mandate, because I always took these things as a mission. How do I convince you to buy something that you say you don't want? That's the salesman's trick. Right. So I knew, all right, what's the opposite of superheroes? Mythology. So I leaned into mythology, which she loved. And so as long as I didn't say cape and mask and use mythological deities and avatars and all that kind of thing, demigods,
right.
I had her in the puddle of my hand. And so we were kind of playing around with it, but we're still trying to get the idea of what Captain Planet would be. And so I'm listening to the writers, and they're all doing their writer thing. We'll have to talk another time about how crazy it is to work with some.
For sure.
Credit. But anyway, I'm sitting there with my boss, and I was told not to speak because I used to always kind of cause problems by doing just this, calling out the obvious. So I had to speak through him. And he was like, "What do we do?" And I goes, and I thought, who fits this archetype we need to convince her to go along with? And I went, "Hey, dummy, it's the simplest guy, Captain Marvel." So how do I convince her about doing this as Captain Marvel while telling her it's Captain Marvel?
Wow.
So I said, keep it simple, stupid. This is me talking to me. What's the Shazam break down to? Samson, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus. So I said, he's made up of elements. Because she was in the New Age. The 5 elements: fire, wind, water, earth. Yeah, she loved that. So he's made up of those elements. The kids had to come in because that's the quintessential animation.
Right.
Gotta have kids. Scooby-Doo. So, but the kids were gonna make him up. The kids had to be part of him. Thus, Captain Marvel, because Billy Batson is part of Captain Marvel.
Right.
I don't think people understand how dope this is right now, because there's not one person that can convince me that they knew that Captain Planet was Ted Turner / Captain Marvel / Billy Batson. There's no way. No,
Our next comic book guy who didn't get credit on it. So, you know,
right.
there's a reason why I was dumb and did not know. Well, actually, I was smart enough to parlay. This is how I got to be a director, because by that time I was still a development artist. Once I was done in this room with this lady, and she bought everything I told her, and we basically created Captain Planet at that table, just her and I. She would throw out a curveball. I batted back to her. The last one that convinced her that I was the man in the room. By that time, I was told, stop talking behind that guy. Talk to me one-on-one.
Right.
Shut everybody up at the table. My boss was like, okay. So I'm now throwing it at her, you know. So he's this and that. And he's made of, now at the time, I said, he's got to be made of the elements. And she's loving it, but I'm going, how the hell do we draw this dude? What is he going to look like? And it was like, dummy, who else could do this? Who else is the perfect avatar visually for Captain Planet? It was simple. We went to Marvel. I said Silver Surfer, with hair. So, and the hair had to be grass because I always saw that fly by him. So not without saying Silver Surfer, without saying cosmic, but that skin, because she really wanted him to have crystal skin. That's what got me on the Surfer. So I went, yeah, he's got to be slim and like a swimmer. Didn't mention swimming. He doesn't need a freaking surfing board. He's flying. So, but you know, surfer to me has always been like a surfer. Right. So by that time, we got a rough idea on paper what Captain Planet should look like. Now I gotta go back and draw it. By that time, though, once we created it, now we got to go into the how do you activate him? How does the powers come? Just can't say Shazam, right? Because I got to buy it on the Earth, Wind, Fire, Water shit. So I went rings. Who do I steal that idea from? Green Lantern. So they got rings. She loved it. Talismans. You know, again, if you know your shit and you use that, it works every time. Right. So I didn't say power rings. I went, no, it's talismans shaped as rings. The oldest ornaments men had in their hands. She loved that. so now they got the rings. So now they're getting the powers. You know, the white kid gets the fire, whatever, whoever gets it. So we got the Earth, Wind, Fire, Water. Simple as hell. Now we got to the little Indian kid. Now it's the real test. And she went, he's got to be love. And I winced. She went, what's wrong with love? What? And I goes, look, we're talking to 8-year-old boys, 8-year-old girls. Girls can get around it, but boys are not going to say love. They're just not going to say love. She's like, well, what should we do? Because no, you go with the symbol. We're talking symbol. What's the symbol of love? Heart. That's why Mati says heart.
Wow. And
the image was perfect. And then went, now he's macho without being macho, because I couldn't make it macho because she would have rejected it.
Right.
Now it's symbolic. Oh, we got it now. So we now by that time we sold it. Now they're developing the stories. I feel like my job's done. I'm going back to my office. The boss comes up. We're going to hire one of the directors. I don't want to get into the politics of. Let's say they decided they're going to hire Neil Adams to draw the character. I love Neil. Neil was one of my idols. So I'm like, I'm out of it. I don't have to draw it. I already drew a version of Planet you will never see that brought Ted to the table. But it looks nothing like the Planet we were going to do. Actually, I made him look more like RoboCop back in the day. But we knew we weren't going to go that way. So Neil does his version, and it's kind of close to what you see now. There was a lot of mistakes, a lot of weird shit. One of them when he had this damn fin on his head. That didn't go. And so we had like 20 versions of Planet, and it just wasn't working. And she was trying to get it back, because I did do one where he was made of grass and dirt and it just looked silly. And she can tell whenever I winced not to buy it. So I'm looking at this and they go, Chuck, do something. And I'm looking at the hair and something went, dude, it would be kind of funny Can we just make it grass? And I was like, yeah, grass. But not just any grass. Let's make it like a what's those things called? Mullet. It's ancient, kind of. The Greeks had kind of a version of it. So that's what I did. And so they sent it back. Neil did his version. I went back and gave her a little crew cut. Never told him I did it. I touched up his art. And she bought it. And that's how Captain Planet was created.
So I need for people to understand the extensive background story we just got on Captain Planet was ridiculous. And I don't think anybody knew that. Like, this is just, I had no idea we were going there. And this is what I'm trying to say. And I'm gonna tell you something, like your story. I'm just happy that I'm part of this broadcast tonight, because I think the information that we're getting is just unreal, and it's just having a conversation, man. And I'm gonna say it again before we go forward. I really appreciate you taking the time to, get on here and talk to us. Let's talk about let's talk about the Ninja Turtles. What was your involvement with the Ninja Turtles? Was that even something that's you want to talk about, or is there another one that you want to get into?
No, that's all cool. Well, I think we talked enough about Dragon. I'm proud of Dragon, even though
we ain't got to talk about Dragon no more.
Dragon, I can just say this: Dragon and execution, how we did it. It's like we took a property that shouldn't have worked and made it work. We had no money. We had the worst studio. Those guys took 20 years before they found me and apologized, because they knew they sabotaged the look of it. But we made it work. That was all that mattered. I'm glad of it. I mean, I look at it now, it's corny as hell, but it was so 80s, man. And it was so 90s, and that's perfect, because in the 90s that was the thing. You got something, you made a toy out of it. It was the ugliest toy. It didn't go anywhere. So same problem.
Let me ask you this about too. So, we're working with the different studios. You work with more than one studio, correct?
Yeah, often. Well, yeah. I mean, the Captain Planet days, they were the longest studio I was associated with.
Was that Dick?
That was Deke. Yeah, they called it Deke.
Dick. So I always call him Dick, whatever, what I mean?
You know what? Everybody else called him Dick. They were the most reviled, hated studio in Hollywood, and we loved it. It was, in fact, Deke didn't mean Deke. It really was a French word that meant disassociation or disenfranchised information communication. French. Don't ask.
That's crazy.
Also the nickname of the owner's father, who was an old Hollywood veteran writer. So he thought it was a play on words. The joke is all of us looked at it as DIC, do it cheap, which is exactly what we did. So
let me ask you this too. So the one thing that I used to know with their animation, I felt like they used a lot of their cartoons had a lot of the early Japanimation style with the shading and things of that nature. Some of y'all, we getting deep right now, but I remember I used to always look at that and I would say, oh man, this is dope. And then it was like you would have certain episodes like Deke's intros to the cartoons were always some of the dope. They were always crazy. They would look good. And then maybe the first 2 or 3 episodes would be like these super great production values, and then it would just tail off, and it wouldn't be. It was still, but then if there were certain episodes that required some really dope action or something, then the production values would go back up again. So you would have like really dope intros, really dope outros, and sometimes it would look like it was totally different character designs. The colors were crazy. It was super fast. Even when they did shit like Heathcliff and stuff, like the intro was crazy. I'm not lying. I know.
No. This is, I tell you why, because often you have 3 to 4 different studios working on it. And some of those studios were subsidized to other studios. Okay. Used to be a running joke. Used to be back in the day, not now, but back in the day, the worst thing that can happen to you if you had a Japanese studio was that they're going to subsidize it or send it off to a Korean studio. And the Koreans weren't at the level they were now.
Today. Okay.
And then all of a sudden the Koreans got better. And then the Koreans started sending it to the guys next down who were worse. In their mind, it was Chinese, but it was really the Filipinos.
Okay.
So you had Filipino studios, like Hanna-Barbera made a big deal about, we got a Filipino studio, and realized half of the guys they had to pay from Korea to go over to run it, to teach the Filipinos the work that they were bragging they can do. So you got, basically what I'm telling you is that it was, if you're lucky, you got 3 out of 13 shows, 2 of them are going to be decent.
Nice.
Out of 26 shows, 3 of them are going to be decent.
So, and it's crazy because as a person who used to love watching these things as a youngin, I used to remember I used to love Deke's intros.
Oh yeah.
The intros were just so spectacular, and it was just I could always tell the difference between.
That was the thing. You would never put your intro into bad animation. How am I going to hook you in if I give you bad animation? Right. So you can spend all your money on your titles.
Right.
Unless you had the unfortunate thing like I did with Double Dragon where we didn't have the money for the title, so I had to take it from my first show. Right. Still going back to it, your first show is going to look best.
Right.
If you're lucky.
For sure.
If you take the best scenes and you create your own title. I was at that school. Very rarely I had the money on a show of mine. The only one I had all the money I've ever had was on a thing called Defenders of Dynatron City, because that was associated with LucasArts.
So wait. So didn't they do a comic book for that too? Did Marvel or DC do a comic book? So you had.
Yep.
What did you do with that book?
Well, we didn't do anything
with that cartoon.
We didn't do that book. What we did is this is the beginning of what they call multi-platforms. So you had, they made a deal with Marvel to do the characters as they were designed by the original guy who created Sam and Max. And then those guys came to us, and then we would go a little further because we're animation. We had to have more models. We had to make it move. So there was a lot more going on with that. But never once did we ever, as we say, cross beams. There was never, hey, the comic book guys are giving us, no, they're always following us or they're on their own.
Right. So I know we have so much to, so let me talk about some of my favorites.
Yeah.
I want to talk about some of my favorites that you did.
Do that.
And I'm biased.
No, I know.
I'm biased as hell. Mm-hmm. So one of the most slept on, one of the best cartoons ever to me is Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I love that. I mean, I can watch that today and I feel like it's, people can say it's blasphemous, but I feel like it's up there with the Justice League cartoon.
You ain't wrong. You ain't wrong. Earth's Mightiest Heroes is the best Avengers.
It's blasphemous.
What did you say?
You said it was blasphemous, and I'm like why?
Because people hold Justice League Unlimited at such a high regard, as they should. Yeah, but I feel like Earth's Mightiest Heroes, I was kind of late because at first I was like, I didn't know if I liked the way the character designs were or whatever. And I watched an episode, and when I say I was stuck. There's many nights that when I'm done doing some work, I will cut it on and I will just watch it, and it's just the storytelling was so good in that cartoon to the point that you'd have to watch it every day, right?
Yeah.
Because there would be something that happened on Monday that you didn't see what happened until Thursday.
They worked out the stories
of next week.
Right.
And it was just y'all did a better job, and I'm not sure all what you did. I'm gonna say y'all did a better job with Secret Invasion than Marvel did with Secret Invasion on Disney.
Well, I'll be honest, I can't take any major credit on that. I mean, I did storyboards on it. My friend who I worked with, who was my director on Spawn and basically kind of brought me up, was the guy who honestly saved that show. That show had a lot of problems that I won't go into. A lot of problems. And the reason it got turned out as well as it did is because he and several other people got involved and made it the way it's supposed to be. And they were also the same guys who were behind the scenes on X-Men Evolution. And but Earth's Mightiest Hero was one where, it despite themselves, it came out well, and it is the best Avengers show out there.
Did you ever work with Larry Houston?
Yeah, we worked off and on together. Yeah, I worked with him on RoboCop, Alpha Commandos, and maybe something else. I mean, Larry and I crossed paths on a lot of things because, I mean, he was already in the directing part and boards, and I came in a little bit later, but I was strongly, comic book oriented. So I never worked under him necessarily, except on RoboCop. And like I said, on RoboCop, all I did was boards. I drew the storyboards and some of them.
So can we talk about I know what your favorite one is. Can we? So Batman the Brave and the Bold. I know you said you only did 1 or 2 episodes on there.
Oh
Correct?
no, I love that. I did more than 1 or 2 episodes.
Okay, my fault. I apologize, brother Pat. Please, my brother, don't block me after that. But
you selling the brother short, man.
I've told you so much. It's understandable you get them all mixed up.
I just so that's another one that I thought was an extraordinary piece. Like I used to like on there when I like the main show, but when they would do those little 1 or 2 minute, like Mandy or something like that. I mean, I would just say I'm a Marvel guy,
right?
But DC has certain characters that I feel like they just kind of stand out on their own. They may not exist well in being as famous as the big 3 in DC. But when they're done well in animation, that's one thing about Justice League Unlimited was so good because you could bring in certain characters and it was like, oh, this is crazy. But I loved Batman the Brave and the Bold. Is there anything that you could say about that as well? Or
yeah, I mean, I'll tell you right off, the person you really need to get to talk to would be James Tucker. James Tucker was the real creative sort of power behind that. He was the director and art director of the show. James came in with the same love of DC history as I would. And I got to do the guys that I liked. There was some I didn't like. Every time I got Plastic Man, I could not stand drawing Plastic Man. But I was lucky to get a couple. The Space Ghost episode was one of my favorites that I got to do. Nice. I was actually sharing it with another artist. He was giving it, but he didn't Space Ghost it enough. And my director, who was a good friend, who was also the guy who also brought me into the Vibe cartoon, the one we did, he didn't know Space Ghost at all, and he knew I did. So he was like, could you punch it up? And I go, hell yeah. Space Ghost is my jam, man. I've been watching since I was 10. So I went in and put all the elements that needed to be in there. It's like the guy drew it. He just didn't make it feel like Space Ghost.
He didn't toss it enough.
He didn't play it out enough. And there was some things that he did that was great. There was one chase with this giant serpent. He put a lot of work into that. But the other stuff, the Space Ghost stuff, like how the invisible power worked, how Space Ghost punched on, there were little things like that I
right. Important.
Yeah.
The work that you did on Ben 10 wasn't during the same time Dwayne McDuffie was working on it, was it?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Ben 10. Here's a tough one again. I worked on the show again, behind the scenes stuff. Not my favorite. I was just freelance. I did some things that I liked. I worked with some directors who, I really enjoyed working with. They gave me a lot of encouragement to be creative. And there's 1 or 2 episodes I really did like, but I wasn't attached to it like Brave and the Bold. I was on staff on Brave and the
Bold. Well, let's do this. Let's switch gears to working. Let's talk about some of the things that you've actually directed that you're super proud of. I know the Dead Space Downfall.
That's
Can we talk about Dead Space Downfall for a second?
Yeah. Dead Space Downfall, why it was so important to me is because in the long run, it was set up to fail and we didn't let it fail. And 2, it was, we were, and you're going to love this because I told you and you went nuts. We were doing a Spawn movie.
Yes.
Unfortunately,
I didn't know about that. Go ahead.
No, it was after the series and we were doing a Spawn movie. It was going to be intense, wonderful. And we were going to do all the things we couldn't do in the Spawn series. And we are going to sell it first as a movie and then find a news network because people were bidding for it. And at one point we thought, well, we're going to go back to HBO. Oh, this is going to be great. But then Todd got into a litigation with the studio that I was working with, and they basically broke up. And Todd and we finished the movie. We finished the storyboarding. We finished the voice recordings. Backgrounds were drawn. It was ready to be animated. Put everything in a box. You would never see it again. It was never animated. Still in a box something years later. So
the Spawn movie was never animated,
right?
But the voices were done. It's written. Me and you gonna talk after the show. We'll talk.
And then
that's a private conversation. We'll get that later.
So the studio then got Dead Space from EA. EA wanted to do a multi.
It was a game. It was a big game at the time.
The big game coming up. I mean, it was one of the few games that people saw it and they wanted this thing. And they were doing a comic book that was a little different from the. I mean, the thing that they understood was that, okay, we're going to hit a comic book animated movie game, and then hopefully the game's going to open into a live action film. So it was basically each property was going to prop the other up.
Okay.
So it was important for us to do the animated movie because we're taking it away from where it was in the comic. The comic is static. I mean, in other words, it's the comic book. It didn't look anything like the game. The guy who drew it was known for horror comics, but I mean, Dead Space, if you see the game, it's very visual, very graphic. Right. And I wanted to pay attention to it and introduce it exactly as anime. And since we weren't just going to hand it over to the animation people, anime people, or based overseas, we're supervising it so that we can get the best of both worlds, Western storytelling, anime feeling. And that's where I went nuts because I wanted this to be, as I told Phil Roman later, you know, this is going to make up for what we lost in Spawn. So we got to make this basically an R-rated animated film. Or as I said, this is going to be like if Japanese animation and Italian giallo horror had a child. This is it. And that's what we did. We made it as violent, insane, crass as hell. But as I said, my goal was to show 20 million different ways to kill someone. And we kind of did.
It was so I remember when Dead Space, the game was a big deal. EA, Electronic Arts.
Right.
And I just remember, you know, I don't know if I don't know if I'm gonna be keeping 100, Chuck. I don't know if I downloaded off LimeWire or something, but I remember watching. I had Dead Space.
How you gonna?
We keep 100. We keep 100 right here. We keep 100. But I remember watching Dead Space.
If I could bust Tony's comic, I guess he could talk about LimeWire. You know.
So I remember watching Dead Space.
Yeah.
And so this is also during that era of, all right, so, you know, anime is starting to be all over the shelves and stuff like that, and the extra hyper violent and whatever. And Dead Space was not PG by any stretch of the imagination. It was rough, and I thought, yo, this is super dope. You know what I mean? So it's just
that was a mandate. That's what we set out to do.
It was a mandate, and to think that this came about because the Spawn animated movie never made it to animation makes it even doper. And I think that's dope that y'all were like, you know, you made it a concentrated effort. Like we're gonna go extra hard on this piece.
There was stuff we did in that we couldn't do in Spawn. That was another reason I enjoyed it. Because I didn't want this to feel one note and feel like, oh, this is like Spawn. No, you look at that and you know this is not Spawn, but it's the same people with the same creative sensibilities. For sure.
So with that in tow, I want to go to the Spawn cartoon because I know everybody wants to know about this. The Spawn series is just it's still you can still watch it, and it's still an incredible series. So people are wondering how come we got our friend Martin right here. And you see Chuck's face. So what I'm going to do is what y'all don't know is that our friend Martin was a big deal too, right? Let's keep it 100. You had the greatest. I mean, just you could just look at the people.
The cast is crazy.
Angela Bassett, Whoopi Goldberg, James Earl Jones, Susan Sarandon, John Travolta. It's crazy, right? But if I'm correct, it was nominated for an Emmy, right? At the same time, Spawn was nominated, also, correct?
Yeah.
So, and you're on both of these. So you're literally up against yourself. It's like, do I win for this one, for that one? What if I don't win for any of these months? This be crazy. Can you give us our friend Martin and then segue into Spawn? And keep it 100.
Martin was long story short, and I'm going to keep it real. I thought it was heinous. The story. I thought it was embarrassing. and I had no control. I had left Deke, so they actually came back as a favor to my ex-boss to help it out, because the guy they put in charge, who they thought was going to save it, never really directed before. And some of the things he was doing with the models, the cast didn't know. They shouldn't know. They're just coming in, doing the script, etc. But you know, you can read the script and go, this is nuts, man. You're just making this look like something out of, I used to call it it was like a Sid Marty Croft production. It was not, but that's how I felt. But I'm there to help a friend, and I was in between jobs, and I had left Deke over a lot of reasons, so I didn't really want to come back. I would have felt different if they said, hey man, take it over and directed it. But if I directed it, I would have had real problems with that script. Okay. Again, it was a little corny for me. And I wanted this, if you're going to do Martin's story, then why aren't we doing Martin's story? We have a rare opportunity here. We could have told his story in animation. And they had this time travel crap because somebody had taught them they should be, it felt like a bad version of Back to the Future. So, and often in life, we take what we do because this is how you survive. This is how you move on. Sometimes you take a crappy job and that opens the door to something better. In this case, I'm doing a crappy job and everybody's walking around talking about how pretentious it was. And I'm doing the dirty work and not getting, you know, I think I got some crap. I can't even remember what I got called on that. Not quite art director or something. And again, I've directed, so I'm not even asked to direct it. And the guy's doing it. He's talking to a big storm. Good for him. My friend Frank Parr calls up later as the show comes to an end and say, hey, I need your help on this show that having a lot of problems and this is going to be a big step for us. And I goes, what's it called? And he goes, Spawn. He goes, holy shit. He goes, yeah, we're taking it over. So I jump on board with him and had a time of my life. So we do Spawn, and then Emmy time comes up, and all of a sudden Martin doesn't fall under a regular, you know, because they showed it at prime time. So they created a special category. So it's primetime animation. And then Spawn gets nominated and is placed in the same category, special anim, because it's primetime. So everybody, let's say everybody on the left thinks, oh, Martin's a shoo-in. Look at it. It's got all these stars, just like you did. You got all these stars. You got, it's Martin on the cover there, right there, you know, and you see the stupid kids in the background, but nobody's noticing it's Martin, my friend Martin. This is good. Here's Spawn. Oh, my God, look at Spawn. Well, Spawn's already had word of mouth. People loved. We took over in the second season and basically picked up the ball. There's a backstory about all that I won't go into. Let's just say that, yeah, we picked up the ball where it fell and almost cracked open, but we kept it going. And here we are now nominated. So Emmy night, we're all there. I'm seeing my bosses on the other side from Deke, and I'm over on the Spawn side, and we're all sitting there going, dude, I don't think there's no way in hell we can win. Come on, it's Martin. And I'm thinking, if they go on quality, there's no way in hell they're going to pick Martin, because Spawn was quality. And then up on the stage is Tony Zanza, of all people, and Charles Nelson Riley, who I actually enjoyed speaking to. Charles was having a ball. Charles got to introduce the winner. Tony was up there like he couldn't care less. Charles gets it, opens the thing, goes, Spawn! We lost our freaking minds. You know, we all stood up, stunned. I actually know the Deke people were already standing up. They thought they were going to get it.
Ooh. So
when Charles says Spawn, that's when we went, holy shit. And Todd's like, everybody to the stage. He took the entire staff of us directors to the stage.
Dope.
And I remember sitting next to Frank, and I was nervous. And I had a mouthful of gum. And Frank said, dude, we're on camera. Like, yeah, stop chewing. Oh, shit. So I had to slowly stop chewing because it was just amazing to us that we won. Deke got so mad they protested. They left and immediately went to the academy and tried to, you know, say that Spawn was this heinous, disturbed thing. How could it beat Martin? And give the credit. They went, no, this is about effort. This is about execution. This is about quality.
So I'm gonna say this. I know that.
So I basically got to eat myself at the Emmys. So anyway.
And listen, how many people can say that? Most people can't even get in the Emmy door. We Paul, we gotta bring Brother Patton back, man, because listen, we going on 3 hours, And this is one of my favorite interviews of all time, and we haven't even scratched the surface. There's so much more that we had to go, but we'll be here for another 2-3 hours, and I know that goes beyond our program, our scheduled programming time.
I can't give you that because my body's going, I gotta go.
Yeah, so, it's time for us, we gotta do, and it's just I just need for people to understand just how extensive this is. And, it was a hard show for us to do because we weren't just talking about one book. We weren't talking about one aspect. This is so much of the sensei's career that we have to
Sifu.
I'm sorry.
You know, one word. Thank you.
I just don't want to be disrespectful to just how elaborate the career is, and I feel like we have to do this again. And I really do encourage everybody. Like, people in the chat are saying needs to come back. I mean, it doesn't even seem like it's been 2 hours and 50 minutes. My thing is, I really, peoples, get those commissions in. Follow Chuck Patton on Instagram. Buy these books. If nothing else, get that Daredevil, get that first appearance of Vibe. Let's shake this up. I want people to start saying stuff like, why is this first appearance of Vibe being sold so many copies on eBay? And it's not an expensive book. You could grab it for a couple of dollars. If you grab it that way, then we could get something on the census. Yeah. Bitter Root sold a whole bunch of copies the other day when we had Sanford on. We need to make sure we do the same for Patton. So I'm done. I'm gonna let Paul say what he got to say. I'm gonna talk all day. Love you, brother Patton. I'll be getting another commission from you, brother. And yeah, we got to get you back on.
When we talk soon.
Well, in order for us to get you back on, you're going to have to be initiated into the Black Comic Lords.
Oh,
right. So we have a tradition here at Black Comic Lords that when you interview with us, we consider you family. So we'd like you to do. My producer's completely asleep right now, so I'll just have to do it myself. I like to look into the camera, say your name, and say, I am a Black Comic Lord.
I am Chuck Patton, and I am a Black Comic Lord.
There you go.
With an Emmy.
Welcome to the squad.
Thank you.
With that, you are welcome to come back anytime. You have our info. Just reach out. I will be talking to you after this about that commission. The struggle for me is, do I want to do Marvel or do I want to do DC? That's a real issue for me. I'll work it out.
Always go to your love. That's what I tell my guys.
That's a good point.
People are asking, what's your Instagram? Isn't it just Chuck Patton?
It's Chuck Patton Art on Instagram. My lovely face is on it. So, it's the same face I asked Paul to put on the poster. So you can find me easily there.
A lot of the stuff that you saw us display tonight came from his Instagram account. There's a lot more that's on there. A tremendous there's so much we left out. I mean, Phil's not lying. This could have gone on for another 2 more hours easily. With the amount of material this man has created, the amount of art he has created between his comic book career and his animation career, we could be here for a while. He's a very prolific artist.
Thank you.
But that just saves us to have more to talk about next time you come back with us. Okay.
That's good. Thank you. I would definitely.
All right. Everybody, thank you for joining us here in the chat. Chat's been great. Appreciate each and every one of you. Big Phil, thank you. Pleasure having you on, bro. I know you had an opportunity to do your flex session, which you love to do more than anyone. I'll let you get a couple more pieces in.
That's a nice frame, too.
Thank you, my brother. Only the best for the best.
I like that. That's a nice frame.
All right. Now, with that, we out. Black Comic Lords, we got you.